кров у серці, як дизель в двигунах, важкий кевларний гір, він душу опіка, атаку сухопутні, ідуть війська! Піхота йде, вони безстрашні, піхота рве, ворожу пащу, ми маєм йти, міцніше сталі, віддати честь нашій державі. Війська ідуть, летять снаряди, небесний гір, несуть армади, після землі, міцніше сталі, за нами мир, і честь держави.
Із Америки приїхав наш надійний побратим, познайомтеся із ним.
HIMARS!
В росіян зі сраки дим.
HIMARS!
Ла-ла-ла-ла-ла.
HIMARS!
За ракетою ракету на паскудних ворогів випускає весь наш гнів.
HIMARS!
Робить все без зайвих слів.
HIMARS!
Ла-ла-ла-ла.
HIMARS!
Московити зі снарядами гребуться на складах, коли робить свій бабах.
HIMARS!
Наганяє лютий страх.
HIMARS!
Ла-ла-ла-ла.
HIMARS!
Розробляють окупанти свої плани у штабах, але чуть не знов бабах.
HIMARS!
Лупить нечисть по зубах.
HIMARS!
Ла-ла-ла-ла-ла.
HIMARS!
Окупанти лиш заповнили склади своїм пальним, як вітається із ним.
HIMARS!
Підіймає чорний дим.
HIMARS!
Ла-ла-ла-ла.
HIMARS!
Не любити московитів і довести нелюбов помагає знов і знов.
HIMARS!
Найточніший орколов.
HIMARS!
Ла-ла-ла-ла.
HIMARS!
Ла-ла-ла-ла. Ла-ла-ла-ла. Ла-ла-ла-ла.
HIMARS!
Ла-ла-ла-ла. Ла-ла-ла-ла. Ла-ла-ла-ла.
HIMARS!
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар.
Ла-ла-ла-ла.
Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt. Welcome back to day 174 of the news.
And of course, the Ukrainians always give us a great bit of news to start off every single week with, and this week we have started off with something a little big. Apparently, one of the largest ammunition depots that have been found in the Crimean region has been struck today and exploded in a massive ball of flame and fire that one can only assume will be crippling the Southern Front's logistical capabilities and the effectiveness of the forces around the Kherson area and Melitopol as well into the near future. We actually have about 5 videos today, so once again, like the Saki airfield explosion, because this is so unexpected, a lot of people turn on their cameras and begin recording. And so, let's start off with our first little clip here, showing this explosion of the ammunition depot. It's a little bit of a shorter one, but it gives you the idea of what a small tactical nuke, like the Davy Crockett, would probably look like if it was, instead of a nuclear weapon, a conventional explosion like a Moab. So here's a video of this wonderful explosion, letting us know why the Russians are not having a fun time. You see it right there, and gotta say, that's a pretty big one. Now when you hear the rooster calling, because the flash was so bright, it thinks the sun is rising. So all in all, pretty decent little explosion there, but we even have more videos showing this ammo dump exploding from different angles. And so we're moving on to the next video, showing the fire that came out of the ammunition depot. This is from a different angle, but still, here's the video. This was a little lengthy and actually shows the aftermath of that ammunition depot after that initial explosion.
Ох, бля, снаряд упал, бля.
Да?
Да? О, на дорогу.
And 1 second, before we actually play this video all the way, I have to pop over here and share my screen with Matthew, because I forgot to do that at the start of the stream before y'all watched. And so, now that we've done that, now we're back to this video, and I'll start it over at the beginning so that way you can see the whole thing start to finish.
Ох, бля, снаряд упал, бля.
Да?
Да? О, на дорогу.
Sounds like an artillery barrage is going on out there, but that's all ammunition inside of that depot exploding.
Да нихера не летает.
When you see some rounds flying off into the distance, and we have to give credit to Russian ammunition depots, because by collateral, they must be destroying more of Russia's military infrastructure than anything on Earth. If we just look at this 1 second here of all of these rockets and ammunition flying off into the air everywhere, I would have to say that is at least an entire MLRS worth of firepower that just flew around into oblivion in that 1 second of the film. Right here. See all the shells flying off. And it even looks like there's about 2 other fires. They're much smaller, so this appears that it may have actually been some kind of a multiple strike, I guess you could say. I'm trying to come up with the exact wordage for it, but apparently there wasn't just one hit on the primary ammunition depot. Apparently secondary targets were also hit around it.
Ух, ебать, аж автобус шевелится.
Ammunition continues to fly, and it is not stopping anytime soon.
Я уехал вот на Джанкой, поеду, автобус оставлю, все, не пускает вопрос. А нет, все, короче, я на паузу автобус оставлю, все, откуда толку, экипажев там, бля.
Ух, ебать, они там поразлетали.
I wonder if this is a sign of goodwill, or if the Russians are going to say that this is some kind of a victory fireworks celebration.
Автобус шевелится.
Это Азовскому, бля, ебан.
В километрах 6 автобус шевелится.
You know, I'm actually really curious, because if y'all remember the last time anything happened, which was at the Saki airfield in Crimea, once again, another attack by the Ukrainians, and we haven't really been able to confirm what was the cause of the explosions, but we do know that it was Ukrainian in origin. We know that Russia today immediately released a statement within just hours of the attack saying that nothing had pretty much happened there, and claiming that everything was perfectly fine. I wonder if we can pull up Russia today, because I haven't really tried. And I wonder if we can see what they're putting out as breaking news. Let's see here. EU sees over Turkish trade with Russia. Wow, what a loaded title right there. And we see them saying that the Ukrainians are bombing the nuclear waste storage, which is interesting. But we're trying to see if they've reported absolutely anything on the current war. Poland wants Ukraine to admit genocide. No. Wow. Russia Today is really putting out some garbage articles. But I can't see a single news article on that explosion. So, unlike last time where they came out and tried to deny everything and, of course, just flat out lie about the situation, we can now see that on Russia Today's actual website, they're not even going to report on the ammo explosion that just happened inside of Crimea. It's such an undeniable fact that is just what it is. There's no other way you can explain it, that they're not even going to try and make an official statement claiming that it was nothing or it was a small accident, because it speaks for itself. And so as we move through the videos, y'all will also start to see that the Russian public that is inside of Crimea is starting to believe less and less in the Russians and what they keep on telling their own citizens, which is just flat up lies. With that, we're now going to be moving on to another angle of the ammo depot exploding, because we have loads of footage of this one, because I don't think anyone in Crimea actually believed that this was possible. And once again, this is 200 kilometers or more behind the Russian front lines, and so this has to be another one of those Ukrainian short-range ballistic missiles like the HIMARS or the Grom, or the Ukrainians have gotten access to ATACMS, and we have not known that yet. We can now see the explosion from another angle.
Ебать. Стекай, с подвала слезь быстро, сейчас волна будет, нахуй.
And I'll cut that one short, but still, pretty massive explosion as you can see. So, we're now moving on to the final clip from up close, I guess you could say, showing the ammunition depot explosion, and I think this one is about as close as they got. We hear a couple of small explosions, then we can see the tactical nuke blowing up over there in the actual depot. Shockwave hitting the cameraman.
Обалдеть.
Golly. I noticed that in this video, usually whenever Russians watch anything explode, you'll always hear "Непять," and then the shockwave will hit them. I noticed that the camera person here in this video was completely silent, was just like, "Oh my god, that's a big explosion."
Вот это да.
All in all, a pretty big ammo dump. And finally, our last clip of this specific ammo dump is from a couple of miles away, it seems, on one of the highways leading to Dzhankoy, where we can see the fire and the explosion from an incredibly far distance, at least from what we can tell on camera. And so here's the video.
Ребят, но это горит склад рядом с моим домом. Сегодня я, наверное, на работу не выйду. Взрывами повыбивало все окна в нашем доме. Потушить не могут. Вон видно на нем взрывы.
As we can see, the fire has apparently been blazing for quite some while at this point. It's gone from being white, which shows it's a massive ammunition fire, to something more of a blackish color, which seems to indicate that it's starting to burn off, I guess you could say, the material that the buildings are made out of, or the surrounding depots, which we did see one earlier that I didn't really speak about. The second smaller plume to the right of the large burning inferno appeared to be some kind of an oil or a gas fire that was most likely caused from a fuel silo being hit or ruptured. So apparently it seems like the rest of where the actual ammunition depot is at this point is just kind of slowly burning and destroying the rest of the compound, if there's even any left at that point.
Это прям вот рядом с селом старая ферма. И с нее вот это вот все горит. 6 утра, утро начинается не с кофе. Извиняюсь, трясутся руки. Это все от нервов.
I'm wondering, we're starting to notice a trend here, and of course, let me preface this by saying this is entirely a comedic take on this, but have y'all noticed something odd? The Moskva sank, and it was a guy who was smoking a cigarette on the Moskva that sank the ship, according to the Russians. Then he swam ashore to Saki, and the airbase in Saki had an accidental explosion, and pretty much the whole thing went up in a ball of fire and fury. Then he moves from Saki, and it looks like he's actually trying to make his way back to Russia, because now he's in Dyshankoy, and another airbase has gone up in a burning inferno. Also, just in case y'all didn't know, we'll actually pull up that specific town. This may be more than just a single ammunition depot. This may have been the airfield right outside of the city, as I'll show y'all right here. There's an airfield here, and as we can see in these pictures that were taken just prior to the war, we can see some Ka-52s, we can also see some Mi-28s here, and it looks like this was a pretty active, I guess you could say, helicopter base for the Russians before the war. They may have also made it a fixed-wing aircraft base as well, fielding Su-27s, Su-24s, and whatnot from this airfield as well. And considering that we looked around, well, I did, and I couldn't really find any ammunition depots to speak of that were in a very advantageous location in this town, rather than this one building right here, or this one on the outskirts, which is more of a farm, although it could be used as an ammunition depot somewhat easily. It seems like the airfield itself would be the best place to store ammunition in the city, and so this may have been another attack on another Russian airfield in Crimea. And so if the Russian Air Force decided to try and weather it out and see if missile attacks like that were that far range would happen again, I think at this point they may start deciding that it's actually time to pack their bags and move the Russian Air Force out of Crimea, so that way they don't continue to get destroyed and lose hundreds of millions of dollars of aircraft about every week at this point. Still, really impressive to see this kind of footage, and of course, this time, I wanted to include a little bit of comedy here, because we all know how the Russians are with reporting their news, and so we actually have two separate little comedy skits, one that the Ukrainians have made, and someone on the internet made the other one. I actually got this recommended to me by one of our viewers in the Discord server about on Sunday night after the stream, and so I made sure to add it because I told him I would. So starting off, we're going to check out the clip that shows pretty much what the Russians say to the public every single time anything happens in Crimea. So here's the video, and I'm just going to let you all enjoy.
Все хорошо. Все в абсолютной безопасности. Никакой паники нет. 6 миллионов единиц техники. 20 миллионов волонтеров. 300 миллионов сотрудников Росгвардии. 650 миллиардов дронов все потушили. Никакой опасности нет. Опасность уничтожена. Безопасность восторжествовала. Конец связи.
Pretty accurate, actually, to the current situation, what the Russians keep on trying to do in response to these terrible shortcomings that should be obvious to the Russian public at this point. So, with that video, we're now going to be moving on into our next one, and after that, we'll then be moving on to something that kind of shows that the Russian public has lost faith in the Russian government, at least in Crimea. So, here's a little clip of the Saki airfield explosions and what the Russian public pretty much reacted like on film. So, here's the video.
Секундочку.
Красиво.
Now, I gotta say something before we move on to the next part of this video. I don't know what Soviet glass sunglasses designer came up with these glasses, but whoever did that deserved to be shot. I don't know who in the world thought that was a good design, but that is terrible looking.
Красиво.
What was this noise? What was that? And this is pretty much exactly how the Russian tourists reacted that we saw on film. Now you see them packing in the Lada. I gotta say, the efficiency here is incredible. Now, this is far more efficient than Russian conscripts could ever pack a Lada. Because look at these two guys here in the back. They get in that tiny trunk, two in the trunk. That thing can hardly fit a single person, and they got 2 guys in there and like five people in the actual in the actual car's cab itself. It's actually pretty impressive. And they even closed the trunk. I mean, like, what workmanship right there. That was actually really incredible. Also, it would be very Soviet for it to be like the 60s and the 70s, and they're literally using like an old-fashioned camera from the 20s where you had to cover over the rear of the camera with cloth so that you could see what you're taking a picture of, and a whole bunch of other reasons why that was done. But anyways, moving on from that little bit of comedy, and also I think the person who gave us that video clip to show on stream, not going to name their name, but they did a really good job finding that one, because I got to go laugh from it too. But anyways, moving on from the jokes and the comedy of the entire situation with what is really going on in Crimea at this point, it seems like the Russian public is truly losing confidence in the Russian government and the Russian military at this point in Crimea, specifically the Russians that have gone there on vacation. Not only are they starting to try and flee the peninsula by car across the Kerch Bridge and causing massive traffic jams because of it, we've seen hundreds of people, much like during the Battle of Kyiv, thousands of Ukrainians would make their way to the Kyiv railway station to try and leave the city. We can now see the same thing happening in Minefield, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, in Crimea, as hundreds of Russian tourists get into the train station and they do not care how they have to leave, they want to leave. This is a queue outside of the front of the train station. And you can see truly how many people are trying to leave Crimea at this point. Just hundreds of them. And it's nothing that you can come up with or fake and say, oh, you know, this is normal railway traffic at the Minefield train station. There's absolutely no way, because if we go to the Minefield train station, which is down here, let me go to it real quick. There we go, found it. Here's the exact train station they are at, if I'm correct. Let me make sure there's not another one that I could be mistaking it for. That is the only train station in town. In the whole city, that's the only one. And so it looks like... looks like they may be about right here in the video. And considering that this platform is absolutely massive, look how long each one is. You could fit hundreds of people on those platforms alone, and apparently the spillover is so big in this train station right now, people trying to leave, they're now flooding into the streets themselves, and they're just waiting for a ride out. And this tells us one thing. The confidence that the Russians have in their government and how this war is going is dropping drastically. Each and every time another attack occurs within Crimea, fear and pandemonium is spreading amongst the tourists. They then flee out of Crimea in massive droves. It's almost a mass exodus. They then return to Russia, and they're most likely spreading the stories of what happened in Crimea around the rest of the country. And now that it wasn't just one attack, which some very dismissive Russians could just say, it was only one, you know, of course the Ukrainians are going to get us every once in a while, but, you know, we can still come back and bite them. Now there's 2, and now these stories will be spread around as well, and people will start to hear that not only one attack of that kind happened, but a second one that led to the explosion of one of the largest ammo depots in Crimea as a whole. And so now the Russian public has got to be thinking, we're losing the war, because for this whole entire time, the news has been telling them, as we can see Russia Today, if we want to go back to their website again, they keep on saying the war is going fine. And even at that, they hardly even report on it anymore. It's just something going on in the background. Everything is good. But the Russian public is saying otherwise now, and there's no way that the Russians can keep hiding and lying to the public about how this is going. It's going terribly. And soon, that public sentiment will start to be picked up amongst the entire population, most likely within the next several months, and especially once the Russians start to fall into the calamity we believe they're going to be in once the fall season comes around and the Rasputitsa is back in force again. So with that, we're now going to be moving out of this area and on into the next actually being within Russia. But before we move there, we're actually going to take a quick pause to address 3 questions from the chat, and after we address those 3 questions, we'll then be moving on into the next segment of news. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks, and we are now moving into our first question segment of the night. But first up, we do have a poll. And the question was, what do you think of the mysterious Russian chain smoker causing all of the fires? 62% of you said, good man, keep it up. Slava Ukraine. 28% said, give that man a raise. And 10% said, he is clumsy as hell. Is it Mr. Lunchtime? Now, on this one, out of the three really good options here, I would have to choose the one with 9%. He is clumsy as hell. Is it Mr. Lunchtime? Because it's very likely Mr. Lunchtime is running around setting those fires.
And I'd have to actually agree with Matthew on that one. It is probably Mr. Lunchtime. Because think about it. Who else would have the built-in armor to survive these kinds of calamities over and over and over? It's not the typical Russian soldier. It's got to be Mr. Lunchtime. Because first, he gets off the sinking Moskva that he blew up with a cigarette, and then he floats to shore, which is something Mr. Lunchtime could do. We do know that he is fairly buoyant. He would then make it to Saki, walk onto land, and because it was so tiring to float so far, he would want another smoke, naturally. And so that airfield would explode. That airfield exploding would then propel him several dozens of miles across the middle of Crimea to somewhere around Kalina. Then he would get up again once he had gotten up from being knocked out cold and continue on walking towards Dzhankoy, where once again he got a little tired, a little winded, takes a smoke break, and he causes the next calamity. Where is Mr. Lunchtime now? We don't know. Mr. Lunchtime may be anywhere at this point, but one thing I do have to say is that the Russians are on the high lookout for this guy because he's an absolute menace to their war effort right now. And so with that, getting beyond the poll and a funny little gaffe, we're now going to move on into the question segment itself. And so, what is our first question of this segment?
All right, and our first question of the night comes from John Dameron, who puts in a $50 donation and says, do you think Ukraine is going to start a large counteroffensive soon since Russians are holding a fake vote in the Kherson region?
Well, I thank you very much for the support. That, of course, helps our stream a whole load. And to answer your question, we've heard a long time ago that there was supposed to be some kind of a counterattack that was going to happen in the Kherson area. Then we saw the Ukrainians retake Vyskopilya and hit all three bridges within pretty much the same 24-hour period. And so it looks like the counterattack would be going on then. But after that, we didn't hear anything about it. The Ukrainians, as far as I can see, are still saying that the counterattack is coming up. And so it's kind of left me onto the fence as to whether that is the second counterattack or whether that's the first one and they've been preparing the entire time. I'm not entirely sure, but one thing I would say is that if they are preparing for a counterattack, it would start to make sense around this time period because this will be when the Rasputitsa starts to begin. We can already see some evidence of that right now as the fields are starting to turn into muddy sludge again because we saw Ukrainian MRAP getting bogged down in the Kherson area just a few days ago. So as far as I'm concerned, I would say that the Ukrainians may be getting ready to conduct a counterattack because the weather is going to start leaning more towards their favor. And it may also be because the fake referendums are being held right now, although I don't really know the results of them, and it doesn't really seem to be highly publicized what's actually happening with them. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support. It helps out the stream a whole load, and I'm glad that you do enjoy the amount of detail and quality we try and put into this news. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And yes, thank you very much for your support, John. And also, up next, we have a $50 donation from White Lightning 777, who says, if you go to Ukraine, what's the best food or wine to have? And also best restaurants, best museums, etc.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, but unfortunately, I don't really think we would have the exact answer to that. We do try and have an answer for almost everything that's asked as best as we can, but unfortunately I haven't been well traveled in Crimea, in Crimea or Ukraine. Crimea will become Ukrainian again very soon, but I haven't traveled around Ukraine enough to actually know the best eats. If we go to Kyiv though, let's try and see if there's any restaurants we can just spot in the center of Kyiv. Wow, there's a lot of them. There's this one, Taiski. Oh wow, that looks really nice, doesn't it?
That does look really nice.
Wow, that really does
What kind
look
of restaurant
nice.
is that?
Oh no, I guess it's like an Asian restaurant.
I like that tiger.
Very small eyes. It's got beady eyes. But what do they have? All right. That looks like a bamboo shoot soup. They have like a little, like, is that shrimp? Is that shrimp fried rice?
It looks like it.
It looks like it. Man, the food looks really good. And also they have some neat stuff in there. But that looks like a really cool restaurant to go check out. Let's go check out another one. Zigzag. Let's go check out Zigzag. Wow, really cool place again. Somewhat smaller portions, but you know, then again,
I would say.
American portions are incredibly huge, so we are kind of biased. We could see
Ooh,
some
go down one plate next. Oh yeah, there we
Oh,
go.
yeah,
That's the type plate we want.
Oh yeah, that looks pretty good. Are those crab cakes?
I think they are.
Wow,
Is this from the
man.
same restaurant?
From Zigzag?
I think it is. I can't really tell.
It apparently is, and I gotta say the eats. Look at that. I think that's a tomato soup. The eats in Kyiv look phenomenal. But let's go back real quick to two other cities real quick, because I'm actually interested now. You got me really interested in the answer to this question. Let's go to Lviv and Odessa, which are two other large tourist destinations in Ukraine, and let's see what kind of food they have to eat there. So let's see. They have the National Opera in Lviv, pretty neat. But what about the restaurants? Let's see. Meat and burger. Very good.
That's my type
name.
of place.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, look at that. Meat and burger, everyone. It's good stuff. Let's see what they got. Goodness me. Wow, that all looks good. Wow, look at the
Are those
burgers down
beignets?
there. I don't know what those are. They're kind of bigger than a beignet. So I would have to assume maybe not. But look at that burger. It's got like a black bun. And look at how thick those onion rings are. Jeez, you're eating well in Lviv. If you travel to Lviv and you go to that restaurant, meat and burger, you're going to be eating well. Cheese puffs? Now, they're getting really American at this restaurant. Steak? Well, steak is kind of a normal thing. But look how good those fries look. It's like no grease. They're incredibly thick. That's the way a good fry is, in my opinion, at least. But wow, man, let's go to one more restaurant here, and then we're going to go to Odessa and check that out. The Lviv Circus, what is that? Wow, it's literally a circus. I guess you would have to assume that from the name. But anyways, moving further on down, let's see here. Looks like Lviv croissant. I think we've seen that once before. I think that may be a chain restaurant in Lviv. 7 piggies. I want to check this one out. Oh, that's neat, isn't it?
That is really cool. These are the coolest restaurants I think I've seen anywhere in,
They really
in
are.
Ukraine.
They're like really cool themed. Like look at that. Look at the level of detail. That's really nice restaurants that they have in Lviv and Kyiv so far. So let's go down to Odessa, because this one speaks for itself. Wow, that really looks good. I don't know what that is, but that looks pretty nice. It's like cranberry sauce on top of like little meatballs. But anyways, with that, we're now going to be moving out of Lviv and down to Odessa to check out the food and eats that you have down in the coastal city that, by the way, it used to be Greek at a time during the ancient Greek period. Anyways, let's get in here and let's see what we got. So we've got, we'll just check out Kotelok, Bar Midi. It's a seafood restaurant that is currently closed. Let's see, but they open at 12 p.m. tomorrow. So if you're just in, Odessa for some reason tomorrow, they'll be open. That looks pretty good. I don't know what it is. Oh, wait a minute. No. It's oysters. Oh, that actually looks really good for an oyster dish. It is a Brussels bar? Mussel bar. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. They have some fish. That looks like dried fish. Honestly, not a fan, but maybe some of y'all are. They have some nice little po' boys. Neat. And this looks more like a seafood kind of restaurant, but that makes sense because you're in Odessa. Let's go down to one more. We're going to go to this one. The, wait a minute. Restaurant Oblaka, I believe. Let's check this one out. All right, pretty neat, pretty neat. You don't have restaurants like this in Alabama, and it looks like, wow, I'm just honestly really floored with the kind of restaurants they have in the tourist cities in Ukraine. Like, it's actually really impressive stuff right here. Honestly, what's funny is that a lot of Americans always think, oh, everyone comes to America and they think everything's so grand and fantastic. Honestly, I have never seen restaurants like this in the United States. These are above and beyond anything I've ever been to. Maybe we have I know we have these in America. It's just I've never been anywhere where they are, and I'm really floored that a lot of restaurants are like this in Ukraine. So what do you think about it, Matthew?
I think they are much better than restaurants in America, or at least what we have in Alabama, at least. Maybe some places have some better. Oh, look at that sushi.
Yeah,
Now that
look
looks
at that.
really good.
Is that caviar?
Maybe that's fake caviar.
It may be fake caviar or real caviar. They do get caviar in this area pretty readily. Caviar is a lot cheaper in Russia compared to the rest of the world because it's where most of it's farmed. But man, I'm really blown away. So with that, I hope that kind of answers your question a little bit. We don't know specific restaurants, but the ones we dropped down into looked phenomenal. So just rewind the video, and if for some reason you are traveling through Ukraine anytime soon, make sure to check out those restaurants and get something to eat there, because honestly, I would eat there if I was there. Also, real quick, one last thing. Let's go back to this restaurant, and let me see if I can get the menu. No, apparently we cannot. Maybe? No, we could get it here. The menu. So. Ukraina. That's a dish. It's just Ukraine, it's a dish. And it's 58, hryvnias. I don't know how to pronounce that, but, 58 Ukrainian, to US dollar. I know I butchered the, $1.58? How much are these? Wait a minute, hang on. 300. You could get food dirt cheap over there. 378. $10 for what I'm assuming is an entree. Jeez, you would be lucky to get a McDonald's burger where I live at $10. And everything's cheaper than that. That's like the cheapest stuff they had on the menu. Well, the most expensive stuff they had on the menu. Man, I'm telling you, we're going to have to go to Ukraine because you can get some good food cheap over there, apparently. And, like, this equaled up to $775, the total for the meal, the whole meal. So, $775. That's $21 for, I'm assuming, a whole party to eat. What a deal. You're not only getting good food in Ukraine, you're getting it at discount prices. So, with that, now we are, and I don't know why my voice is doing that recently. Sorry about that. Now we are going to be moving into the next question. And thank you so much once again for the support and giving us the chance to be able to just travel around Ukraine for a second on the map and take a look at some really cool stuff. So with that, we are on to, I believe it's the final one of this question segment before we move on.
And yes, this is going to be the final one of this question segment. But folks, real quick, I only have 3 live chat questions at the moment. So if you have a question for us that you want answered and don't want to put in a super chat, feel free to tag either me or the Enforcer and put it in the live chat, and I will put it in the queue. So up next, and for our final one of the segment, we have a $40 donation from Vlad, who says, "Keep up the good work. Here's for the coffee fund, and hello from Australia. My question is, if in the 2024 U.S. election, a president who thinks Russia's invasion of Ukraine was genius, as Americans, are you concerned they stop supporting Ukraine and leave NATO?"
Well, I thank you very much for the support, Vlad, but unfortunately, I really can't answer that question because it is political in nature. So sadly, I can't really touch on it because if I did, it would start political firestorms in the live chat, and it would also break our no politics rule because to answer that, I would have to get deeply into American politics to be able to explain it. So unfortunately, I cannot, but I do thank you for the support, and I thank you so much for supporting the Coffee Fund, and also thank you so much to all of our Lee Spring Army members who are from Australia. I know Sydney is not the only city in Australia, but this is just for me to be able to pull up the Google Maps again because I accidentally shut it off. But not Disney, Sydney. It's a really cool place. I've checked it out on Google Street View. And also a really cool city is the capital of Australia, which is Canberra, which I bet you didn't know, Matthew. The center of Canberra is actually in like a circular, I don't know what the actual city planning for this is called, but it's in a circular street layout, which is incredibly cool. And also the Australian Parliament is this building right here.
Well, that is really cool, actually.
That
It's like the Apple Park building, like a big circle, and built around whatever that is in the center.
It really is, and they also have the old Parliament House here. Let's take a look at that. They built the new one right behind the old one. So let's spin around. Oh, that one wasn't really that impressive, actually, but, you know, it's Australia, so it's not like they're going to be building a Westminster Palace or anything. But wow.
The Australian viewers are about to get triggered.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm saying that, of course, Australia isn't as economically prosperous and wasn't an empire at a time to be building massive ornate structures like Westminster Palace, but still, it is a pretty cool building, and the new one certainly puts the icing on the cake. If we can get on the streets that go around the Parliament building, the current one, well, it looked like it would have looked cool, but here from the street, you can't really see anything. Oh, there it is. It's still pretty cool. I think that's a really cool Parliament building. I'm still into the old ones, though. Me personally, I love buildings like Westminster Palace and the U.S. Capitol building because they have a lot of character to them. They represent the countries that they're from incredibly well culturally, and much like the Reichstag as well in Germany, or for example in France. I don't really know the Parliament building of France, but we will save that for another time. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope you do understand that, unfortunately, I can't answer that question because it does get political. One thing I can guarantee for sure, though, is that regardless, the United States will always be in NATO because it is literally, to say it in the best terms I can, it is literally America's friend club. That's pretty much what the whole thing was started as, and so us leaving it wouldn't make a lot of sense. So with that, we are on from this question segment and into the next segment of news. If you have sent in a super chat tonight, do not fret. We will get to every single one of them and address them before the end of the stream. And we're also going to address as many live chat questions as we can. Sometimes we actually get to all of them. So if you want to, make sure to @Enforcer or @EnforcerMatt with your question, and we might be able to answer it. And so with that, we are now moving into Moskva, which always has fun news. And what we've got now is a toy robot from AliExpress being exhibited at a arms expo, covered up like a ninja and carrying an RPG. So, without further ado, here's the video of that. Y'all are gonna love this. Behold, the future. Now, what's interesting to me, and something that I know is entirely impracticable, is the covering of black fabric on this little thing, this little toy dog, pretty much. Because in real life, in actual combat conditions, that provides no advantage whatsoever and adds to the cost. And so it'd make a lot more sense to take the fabric off. The reason why they did this is because this little thing is pretty much a toy from China that they've covered up in black fabric so that way you don't know it's a toy from China, and then they mounted an RPG on top of it. One thing I can promise you is that this probably wouldn't be able to survive one shot of the RPG because the recoil would most likely destroy a lot of its motors. We can now see it standing up again. I see it backing up, and look at everyone at the Arms Expo treating it like it's a real weapon of war. And I'm just gotta ask, what does this really serve? I mean, like, what purpose would this actually serve? Like, you're in an APC, and you just see a Ukrainian tank in the distance, and instead of just walking a few feet to fire the RPG, you throw out the dog and say, okay, boy, go. And, like, what's the point? I don't understand it. And also, I see a lot of people giving us the actual name of the dog. Apparently, it's the Op dog. Op, Chinese dog. Well, let's just type this in. This will probably be a lot easier. Chinese dog robot. Alright, so, I think we should be able to find some images here. And, let's see, these look like the Boston Dynamics dogs. But then again,
Enforcer, that's what I was just about to say. It looks remarkably similar to Spot from Boston Dynamics. It's weird. It's almost like they ripped them off.
It really is. And guess what, everyone? It's now time for a short little episode on how the Chinese rip everyone off. Because I gotta tell y'all, they do an incredible job at it. So let me show y'all this, and we're going to do this incredibly quickly. Chinese Air Force, which is technically the Republic of China's Taiwan's Air Force, but it's actually, anyways, we're not going through all that. Let me scroll down here and let me show y'all two planes that are almost ripoffs of other countries' stuff. So first, let's look at the Chengdu J-10. Now, I don't know about y'all, But this oddly looks like a Eurofighter Typhoon, doesn't it? It just looks like it. It's not exact, I will say that. But the overall design, everything about it looks like a Eurofighter Typhoon. It's just a really cheap knockoff, as you can see right there. Doesn't it, Matthew? I mean, like, is that just me? Am I crazy, or does it look a lot like a Eurofighter?
I don't know. It looks pretty different to me.
Okay, it does
or
have
at least
one
that's what the
engine.
Chinese would have you think.
That's true, and it only does have one engine. The Eurofighter Typhoon has two, but still, it's very close. Now, another one. Now, there's a couple that you just have to say, these are knockoffs. Let me scroll back here real quick from the J10. Let me show y'all the J11. This is a license-built version of what the Russians and the Ukrainians are using right now in the current war, the Su-27. It is literally a copy of it. Also, another interesting thing with their Air Force, just to go over a couple of more, is that the J-20 might notice it a little, but it bears a striking resemblance in a couple of ways to an F-22. Not exactly, though. It's very far off, but some of the geometry of the design and such things like that, it is just so similar. It's uncanny in some ways. Also,
And Enforcer, that just tells you that the United States has the best designs in the world, if even the Chinese are copying it.
And that is really true. And also another thing is that they've now improved the license-built version of the Su-27, and now they've made the J-16, which is a knockoff of a knockoff. Actually, honestly, they say this is an improvement of the Su-27, but I swear this thing looks more like a MiG-29. Let me pull that up real quick, because that is almost like a striking resemblance to a MiG-29. That may just be me. I may have to look at the profile of the MiG-29 again to make sure. Let me try and find a similar picture. There's... that's not really a great picture. This one's probably better. I mean, it is close. I mean, like, they even copied that little taper at the top of the rudders on the MiG-29 on this J-16. I mean, I just gotta say, we're not going to stay on China for too long. I see that some people are actually interested in this, but they knock off a lot of people. And now it looks like the Russians are knocking off their knockoff of the Boston Dynamics robot and strapping an RPG on top of it. But that thing wouldn't work, and it's just for show to make it look like the Russians are actually making some kind of progress technologically, but that wouldn't do anything. So with that, I'm now going to move you all on to some more disturbing footage. This was taken in 2015 to 16, but something that was brought up in the caption of this video required me to show it tonight. This video being taken in 2015 to 16 was showing 15 to 14-year-old boys playing simulated war games where they would, you know, quote-unquote kill the enemy. And what was interesting to me is that, fast forward to the present day, those kids are old enough now that they may be conscripts in the current war. And so I'm going to show y'all the Putler youth. I believe there's a speech to text at the bottom of the screen, so I'm not going to talk over it too much. So without further ado, here's the video.
Я всех убил. Я только 2 убил. Ничего, я 1 убил столько. Не как вы. Ты одного только убил. Одного я убил, одного ранил. Бегом.
Вы сегодня, может быть, не очень сильно выросли как личность, не очень сильно выросли в своих индивидуальных профессиональных навыках. Но вы за 2 часа сегодня выросли как механизм. И это тот самый механизм, который интересен нашей Родине в будущем. Не вы как личность, а вы как механизм.
А я вот сейчас смотрю, и вроде и нет, он есть. Есть еще ребята, которые готовы и хотят защищать свою Родину. Вы подрастете и будете жить в другом, счастливом, могучем, огромном государстве. Вот, потому что для России границ, в общем-то, нету, есть горизонты только.
Oh, that's a nice little statement right there. That sounds a lot like what the Germans would say in the 30s. For Germany, there are no borders. There's just a living room.
Есть горизонты только. Вот. Она должна быть не в этих границах, которые сейчас там обозначили. Она гораздо больше. Просто так никто не отдаст нам потерянных территорий, никто не отдаст нам те ресурсы, которые у нас отобрали, поэтому нам придется им забирать самим. Ибо Господь сказал, что не мир я вам принес, но меч. Можно.
Now, not to get any religious or anything here, but I don't think the Lord said that specific line about I did not come to bring peace but a sword. I thought the whole thing was peace, but we'll let the video continue.
Можно это как-то по-другому интерпретировать, а можно и как он сказал, так и понимать. Вот поэтому готовимся к войне в любом случае.
Направо. И прям шагом.
And that's the end of the video. This was apparently put out by Radio Svoboda. I'm not sure what Svoboda is in Russian, apparently. But still, this is a pretty interesting video. And of course, it points out the same things that I pointed out. That's why I included this video tonight. And to think that these kids had pretty much been brainwashed from when they were incredibly young and very impressionable to think that these kinds of aggressive wars of expansion are justified is pretty shocking to say the least, and something I actually didn't know about until I saw that video right there, and I was like, wow. Apparently, this indoctrination of these kids who are in this war has been going on for an incredibly long time, and may be the reason why they sometimes justify war crimes, because Russia, in their mind, has a right to expand. It's just what they will do. It's pretty much destiny for them. And so they go into Ukraine thinking that, and whenever they get any resistance, they think these people are obviously stupid. They don't understand the Russian image. We can take what we want and do what they want, and then they start committing war crimes all over the place. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of Russia, as that's really the only news we've gotten from there today. And we're now going to be moving down to the location unknowns to show while indoctrination does occur, it doesn't really equal up to much when you actually have to go up against experienced fighting forces. So starting off on day 173 and then moving on into day 174, we can see that the Ukrainians were firing RPGs by volley at the Russians in an unknown location. This video was taken by the Ukrainian SSO, which is their version of the FBI, pretty much. We see him aiming the RPG and firing it, and then he walks off, and two of his buddies go running out there into the open to also fire off their RPGs, and then he goes to reload another. This, everyone, is how you fire by volley in the modern day. And now I know that someone's about to come down into the comments section and go, "Yeah, that's not firing by volley. It would be firing by volley if they all fired at the same time." I get that. But for the sake of that joke, we're going to leave it the way it is. So pretty impressive to see, pretty neat, and hopefully they were hitting the Russians further down range. We didn't see them on video, but assuming that they were firing off that many RPGs, one would have to assume that there was something down there. With that, we're now moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown News, where we can see a Stugna attack. Everyone's favorite, everyone loves them, and so, without further ado, here's another Stugna attack where the Ukrainians claim, although we couldn't really see it too well in the video, I'm sure it's accurate, to have knocked out a toss-2 flamethrower.
Есть? Да, давай.
We now see the Stugna missile on its way. And we could see something downrange fire. It may have been the toss itself.
Шо?
Yeah! And they hit it.
Пять яиц картоплю. Блядь.
Сука, вода.
Пизда нахуй. Є ракети ще?
Нема.
Сука, одна, Андрюха.
Заряжай ту, блядь.
Давай.
They're pretty excited about that, and I would have to be too, as the Stugna is an impressive weapon, and knocking out a TOS-2 with it is a pretty rare thing. We've hardly ever seen TOS systems being knocked out by Stugnas. Usually they're knocked out by artillery, but still, this is an impressive knockout by the Stugna crew, and all the congratulations go to them, and I'm sure they are already celebrating as of right now. With that, we're now moving on to the next bit of Location Unknown News, where we can see two Russian vehicles come under fire, and from what it looked like on the video, they may have been coming under tank fire, although I'm not exactly sure, and so, here's the video. When you see the two tanks moving across the open, it appears that there's a BMP-2 in the rear and a T-72 up at the front. We can then see what appear to be a round right here. It flies through the tree line right below this BMP and appears to have bounced off the ground, missing the BMP by inches. Right there. We then see the tank and the front explode. We're not exactly sure. We didn't see the round come in on screen. It may have ran over a mine. Now the BMP is turning hard right. Actually, it's doing a complete 180, and now it's backing up off the road. We then see a BMP further down the line, firing into the distance, and we can now see this BMP moving around. And it also appears that someone just bailed out. That may have been the commander because his hatch is open on top of the turret. We now see one of the crew members of the tank hopping out and running as well. And that's the end of the video. Not good for the Russians, but great for the Ukrainians. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the final bit of Day 173 Location Unknown News, where we can see a Ka-52 take a direct hit from a manpad. And so, here's the video. I'm sure y'all will be able to know and see what's about to happen. Smack. Let's watch that one more time. Smack. That was a dead-on hit to what appeared to be the left engine of the Ka-52. The Ka-52 has two engines. If one's knocked out, it's pretty much already going down. The Ka-52 practically requires both of its engines to operate. I'm sure someone's about it. Whenever I say anything like that, there's always going to be someone, well, if they have the special modification Z1L115, the helicopter could fly for another 3 miles. But by and large, it usually takes both engines for a Ka-52 to run. If it's hit like that, I'm assuming that it didn't make it much farther than what we saw in the video. So with that, now covering all of the Day 173 on Location Unknown News, it's now time to move on to today, here on Day 174. Starting off in our first bit, we can see a BMP-2 doing what the Russians do best, which is a human wave kind of tactic. We can see the two BMP-2s had apparently already run over anti-tank mines, but this third BMP-2 decided that it would be the exception and it could make it through the minefield. Oh yeah, I gotta let y'all hear this song because I don't know if I'm the only one who hears it. But when I was listening to the song today, it sounds like there's a specific line this guy says at the beginning. So I'll play it real quick. Eat nuts. Is this guy saying eat nuts? Like, I don't know if that's just me, but for some reason that's what it sounds like, and I don't know how that would fit into a normal music, into a normal song lyrically. But anyways, moving on from the song itself, we can see the BMP rolling on forward to where the other two ones have been destroyed, and it runs right over a mine. The third BMP lost in this area, and apparently the second one, or the first one for that matter, may have not been lost too far sooner, because we can see someone out there just several yards away running away. So apparently the crew of one of the other BMPs was still around, apparently. We now see everyone climbing off of that BMP as it's been totaled, and we can see the Russians doing the typical clown car thing where everyone's climbing out of the back of the BMP, the top of the BMP, and everywhere else. With that, we're now moving on to the next bit of Location Unknown News, showing Ukrainian troops on the move, and a lot of them. The location is of course unknown, and there were no identifying, I guess you could say, landmarks in this video to show, and so let's take a look at these Ukrainians traveling through a country road in the hundreds. Quite a lot of them. Quite a lot of them. That's a lot of Ukrainian troops. I mean, goodness. I feel like this is a troop movement in the First World War or something with how many of them there are in a single group. With that, that's the end of the video, but it's a really impressive look at loads of Ukrainian troops moving somewhere up towards the front. Hopefully they're not on the front line, and if they're doing this, they are screening the air above them, because a drone could take a look at that, and there could be a lot of casualties. So hopefully they made sure to take the right precautions, or that wasn't close to the front line, because that could lead to some disastrous problems if they were to be spotted. Moving on into the next bit of news, we can then see a drone attack. And just mute this real quick. They're, of course, playing the good music, but unfortunately I have to keep it muted. You see the Russians on the move. We can see some of them still in their trenches on the right side of the screen. And now we can see that the bomblet has been able to claim one. It looks like he may have taken some shrapnel to the knee. And the rest of them are just going to run away and leave the guy behind. Apparently
wow,
this guy...
that is incredible. They really just going to run off and leave him like that.
Yeah, apparently this guy also got wounded too, and he realized it after the shock, I guess, wore off of him within seconds, and he fell to the ground as well, and the other two just kept going. Let's watch that again. Bomblet falls. We can see that it fell right in between the two of them. Right there. So it got him and him. That's something we can confirm. So he falls to the ground. It got him in the leg. And we see this guy here too. I think he's realizing that he may have been wounded. Let's keep an eye on him. Wait a minute, apparently... Wait a minute, no. That wasn't the third guy who got wounded. That was the second guy. Right here. Odd. But he also falls onto the ground as well. The other two just keep going. And we can even see that it looks like he's carrying a guy right there. Like slung over his shoulders. Huh. I don't know what to make of this, y'all. I mean, like, this is one of the weirdest things I've seen. It looks like they're getting rid... They're taking one guy away, but then they lost two. If this is a medevac group, they're not doing a good job because they're leaving more people behind than they're picking up. But with that, we're now going to be moving on into our final bit of Location Unknown News, where we can see an intercepted phone call, and I usually do not include these because it's hard to verify them, but this one sounded pretty legitimate, and this was what they were saying, because I do understand Russian a little, and was able to pick up on the specific words when they were being said in the translation that would largely confirm this to be true, as far as we can tell. Also, they included a specific guy who gave these orders, his name and his picture, which also added a lot of validity to the story. So with that, I'm going to let y'all see what is said in the intercepted phone call on screen, and it is some pretty sickening stuff.
Беркут, я 23-й. Говори, блядь! От меня слева, получается, как мы заехали, получается, справа. Алло? Да, блядь! Машина проехала, не увидели там машины или техника, и 2 человека с рощи по гражданке. Да валите всех нахуй там, ебаный в рот, блядь! Я понял. Тут вся деревня в гражданской. Блядь. Едет гражданская нахуй, в расход, сука, всех. Понял, нет? Да, понял. Своёбы, блядь.
That's the end of the video, and if that is an actual intercepted phone call that is true to its source, that is one of the most sickening things that we've ever heard. Is that this guy clearly was saying, apparently the officer that is there, that there are nothing but civilians in this village. We don't really see anything. Apparently a car drove by. What do we do? And this the second officer that's apparently further away from that area just tells the guy to kill everyone. If you just see anyone, just kill them. And that kind of tells you the kind of mindset that Russian soldiers have, and it may be, by and large, the Russian public. Now, there are dissenters. Not everyone in Russia is supporting this war. We know that good and well at this point. But considering that as this war goes on, we see more and more information to show us that Russians are getting indoctrinated at an incredibly young age, the war crimes that are clearly present and evident all over the front lines throughout the course of this war from start to finish, one would have to assume that this would be true. I don't know what village this would have been in, but it's really sickening to think that stuff like this is being ordered by other officers to commit war crimes against the common Ukrainian citizenry. And so, with that in mind, I hope that the Ukrainians are able to find this guy, this officer here that gave these orders, and also the officer that carried it out, and make sure that they pay. Not necessarily through a court, but maybe a drone strike. With that, we're now going to be moving on out of the location unknowns and on somewhat of a low note, and we're now going to be moving out to Belgorod. Actually, we have gotten no news from the Kharkiv front today or yesterday. It appears to have largely fallen silent, and so for now, it stays the way it is. perfectly quiet with no activity. But in Belgorod, we can see that the Ukrainians have been denying the Russians access to television, which is, of course, pretty good to know. We can see here that a drone was able to strike a radio tower or a TV tower near the Belgorod area. Here's the video. And you can see the round hit there at the bottom of the TV tower, most likely causing some pretty decent damage to it, and most likely knocking out its ability to broadcast for a while until it can be repaired. Actually,
that's definitely gonna knock it out. that'll take care of it.
I have watched the first 10 seconds of this video to confirm it actually was a strike. Now our video is spazzing out and having a seizure, so let me cut that off and
that's because the broadcasting tower fell over. It lost transmission.
That's true. That's true. I only watched the first 10 seconds of this to make sure that, okay, apparently the broadcasting tower being knocked over has also cut out our ability to watch the video. Interesting. But y'all saw what was about to happen. And surprisingly enough, it's kind of carried over onto our stream as well. So with that, I gotta say, pretty nice to see the Ukrainians are knocking out TV towers, and I gotta say, they did a lot better job knocking out that tower than the Russians ever did trying to knock out the Kyiv TV tower, which still stands to this day. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Belgorod news, which was unfortunately interrupted due to some kind of a little technical glitch, and we're now going to be moving on into the news of the Southern Front, which is actually our last news segment for the night. So, before we get there, we're of course going to answer another 3 questions from the chat, and after we answer those 3 questions, we'll then be moving on to our final news segment, which will also include the news from Kyiv, the one bit we got, and the speech from President Zelensky. And so with that, what is the first question of this segment?
All right, folks, and moving into our second to last question segment of the stream, up first we have 2 polls that we must address before we move on to our super chat questions. So the first poll, which ended a little while ago, the question was, what do you think about the Russian indoctrination video? The most selected option was, it is cult-like indoctrination, bad. And 14% of you said that is normal for countries to do, and 86% said it is cult-like. So Enforcer, what are your thoughts on that first poll?
I would have to say that this kind of stuff that the Russians are doing with those kids is pretty cult-like. And of course, I see people in the chat saying, oh, but America does it too. If you're going to call the Boy Scouts what that is, then I hate to say it, but that's way off base, because I've never seen the Boy Scouts saying, the world is ours, kids, and all we have to do is go out there and take it. Canada's ours if we want it. I've never seen anyone in the Boy Scouts say anything like that. I've never seen anyone in the United States at all, and of course, being incredibly young, 20 years old, and just coming out of the school system, there is no mention of anything like that in school. So, gotta tell you, that, in my opinion, it was pretty much cult-like. Now, I'm sure that's about to start a whole argument in the chat about is it or is it not, but that kind of stuff is crazy to me, and I don't really find that normal. You don't see, and I'll say this though, you do see cadet programs in a lot of countries, like the United States has the JROTC in high school, which is militaristic in a way. They do usually, I think it's actually required in most JROTCs for you to wear dress uniforms a certain amount of time per week or per month. So in that regard, yes, it's kind of similar. It kind of is normal. But in the JROTC, when I was in it in high school, I didn't hear our Army instructors, or whatever JROTC you're in, I never heard them get up and go, kids, we are going to slaughter everyone in the world just for fun because we can do it because we are the best. I never heard that. So I would consider that cult-like what the Russians were pretty much telling those kids. It's very similar to something like you would see in Hitler Youth. So with that, I hope I was able to address that poll. We're now going to move on to the next one.
And real quick, I have to point this out. Somebody in the live chat said the Pledge of Allegiance, LOL. I'm not sure if they were trying to allude to that's indoctrination or not, but the Pledge of Allegiance is definitely not the equivalent of Russian indoctrination. I'd have to disagree strongly with that.
And also the other thing is that the Supreme Court ruled that even in school, you do not have to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And in my school, if you didn't want to stand for it in Alabama, which you would consider to be incredibly patriotic around most of the country, if you didn't want to stand for the national anthem, no one was going to force you to stand for it or get you in trouble for it, because there was really nothing they could do. So I wouldn't consider that indoctrination, because indoctrination would be forcing one to do that. And in the United States, I don't really know of anywhere that forces people to stand up for the national anthem. It's something that they do every day in school. They always say, please stand for the pledge, but you don't have to. So it's not really indoctrination, in my opinion. So with that, I hope we were able to address that real quick. And with that, we're on to the next poll.
All right. And the next poll asked, do you believe that the Russian recorded phone call is legitimate? 86% said yes, it is legitimate, and 14% said no, it is probably not. And actually, I should have added a third option and said 50-50. It could be true or false, because I'd have probably fallen in that category. But Enforcer, what are your thoughts?
I would say that, I would have to say, actually, that it's most likely legitimate. We do see a lot of phone calls, and I usually cannot verify them beyond the audio alone, so they're never included. But that one, considering that they had a picture and a name for the person talking on the phone, I assume that that one was most likely accurate. They usually don't go to that level of detail with these phone calls and their interceptions, and so I believe that this is kind of like an FBI Most Wanted sort of thing, where they included the phone call and the name and the face of the person who perpetrated those crimes, pretty much, and gave the order to do that. So with that in mind, I feel like it was most likely true. So I hope I was able to answer that poll real quick. And also, I see a lot of people saying that patriotism is like okay, and I never said that patriotism was not okay. I'm a huge American patriot, and I think that anyone around the world, if they're patriotic for their country, that's a good thing, because it's not. I don't really see the benefit, if you're an American, in rooting for, say, Spain, because you don't live around the Spanish people, and their success is not your success, if y'all see what I'm saying. So I always, in my opinion, believe it's the best thing for people who live in a country to root for their own country, because their success is your success, so there's no point in trying to screw them all over, because you're screwing yourself over in the process. So with that, we're now going to move on to the first question of this segment.
All right, and first up, we have a $100 donation from Paolo Corradini, who is a longtime channel legend and supporter. And Paolo, thank you very much for that very generous donation. And Paolo says, I love the new format without the schedule and with the back and forth banter between the two of you. Sounds less repetitive and more engaging and entertaining. Thank you for keeping the spotlight on the war, and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much, Paolo, for enjoying the effort we put into this nightly. And also, I thank you so much for enjoying the little bit of commentary and dialogue we try and pick up here and there these days. The news is, of course, the news, and in its own right, it will be about as exciting or as boring as it can ever be. But we always try and spice up the more comedic side of things whenever there is a funny moment. With a little bit of a commentary from both of us. So I'm glad you do enjoy that little change, because we've tried to make that over the past few weeks. Also, thank you so much for enjoying the efforts that we also put into trying to keep the spotlight on this war. Well, I've, of course, made the promise that for every single day of this war, we were going to cover it. And we have been doing that for 174 days, save Mondays. And I thank you so much, Paolo, for appreciating it and also helping us to keep on keeping these streams running. And so thank you once again for the support, and the massive support at that. It's huge support, and that does mean a lot to us. It helps to keep the college tuition going. It helps us to keep the bills paid and the lights on. And so we appreciate it so much, and thank you once again for the massive amount of support and being a longtime member of this Leaf Spring Army. And so with that, we are now moving on into the next question in this segment, and thank you so much once again for the support.
And next up, we have a $40 donation from Praise Adonai, another one of our longtime channel legends and supporters, who says, Enforcer Matt, why hasn't Ukraine shelled the pontoon bridges and ferries at Kherson? They appear to be letting Russia into Kherson to have to eliminate them. Why let them build up again? A weaker force would help Ukraine. Good job, guys.
That is a great question, and I'm not exactly sure if they have hit the pontoon bridges or not. We did see a HIMARS strike hit the Antonovsky Bridge again, which may have also collaterally hit the pontoon bridge. I'm not exactly sure. We didn't ever get picture or video evidence to confirm that specific statement. But one thing I would say is that the Ukrainians may be allowing them to make these pontoon bridges, so that way there's a path of retreat. If y'all don't know, a path of retreat is always something you want to give your enemy, so that way they don't sit there and have their back to the wall and fight until the literal end, because if you cut them off completely from the other side, that could have a lot of negative impact on an offensive pushing them towards the river, because then they have an incentive to fight, because there's nowhere to go, there's nowhere to back up. It's either they are either holding that territory, or they're dead, or they're captured, and so that will then make them want to fight even more. That's at least I guess you could say, the standpoint behind it. If you look at, for example, the Battle of Vienna in, I believe, let me think, 1813 or 1814. I'm not exactly sure when that occurred. But when Napoleon was retreating from the city of Vienna and crossed the Danube River, as usual, what would doom the French army is that a corporal blew the bridge too early, which was the only route of retreat for the entire French army, was a single bridge over the Danube River, and the 20,000 remaining troops that were still within the city of Vienna just fought until the end. There was no other option for them. If they had still had the bridge, even if the coalition's army had bore down on them and started inflicting massive casualties, there would have been a way out, and a lot more of them would have just ran for the horizon instead of fighting until the end like they did in Vienna. So in that perspective, I hope that answers the question with a little bit of historical precedent. You usually want the enemy to have a way out, so that way they don't fight as hard, and they're like, hey, it's okay, we can actually lose the ground and live to fight another day. If you don't give them that option, then it's going to be a lot bloodier and a lot more difficult to try and take that ground. So with that, wait, Leipzig, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michael Muller. It was not Vienna, it was Leipzig, and that was in an entirely different area, which is up here, actually, so whoops, sorry on my part, but there is a river here, so at least I got that right. It is the Elsterbecken. So very sorry about that. I want to make sure we make that correction right here, right now, because I know that there's going to be, and I don't mean to say this all the time now, but it does get a little bit irking when people like take great offense to facts like that, and they're like, oh, get your facts straight, enforcer. It's not Vienna. It is Leipzig. You're a dishonor to your family in 50 generations. It's just like, why? Why have such a visceral reaction? But anyways, I hope that answers the question, at least in a way, with historical context. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And for our final one of this segment, we have a $30 donation from Mr. Dr. Batman, who says, Slava Ukraine, I've heard reports that the Crimea ammo depot attack today was an espionage attack, given its location to the front line. Do you think this will continue deeper into Crimea?
I'm not entirely sure if that was a espionage attack. I've seen that both the Saki Air Base and the Zhankoi have both been claimed to be espionage attacks, and I just don't really see how that could really happen. For it to happen twice in a short period of time at two separate air bases seems highly unlikely. So honestly, I'd have to say it's most likely some kind of a missile attack, because espionage groups traveling around with enough explosive ordnance to create these ammo depot fires and explosions seems pretty far-fetched to me. It would take a lot of vehicles for them to be able to do that. It's not like the Special Forces are lugging around 500 pounds of explosives on their back each to be able to pull off this stuff. So I don't think they're espionage attacks, at least in my opinion. And once again, I'm not saying that I'm 100% right. I could be entirely wrong with that. And these all could be espionage attacks. But I'm still under the premise that they're most likely some sort of a short-range ballistic missile, like a HIMARS. However, the question of do you think this will continue deeper into Crimea in general in terms of the attack and not really the actual cause of them, I certainly do believe that Ukraine has now laid out the precedent that more of these attacks will be occurring throughout the country. For example, at the air bases near Oktyabrsk, and also, you know what? Y'all see the names. Malenke. We'll go with that one. That one's a lot easier to say. I think that these attacks will most likely continue into these air bases here, because they're surely most likely being used by the Russian Air Force, and the attacks of these air bases will lead to the Russians to lose a lot more supplies and a lot more equipment than normal. Also notice that there is an actual road that travels. Oh, wait a minute, it's a bridge that goes under the airfield. I was about to say, that is insane. Anyways, with that, I hope that answers the question, and I thank you once again for the support. And with that, we're now moving on to the final question of this segment before we get to the last bits of news for the night. And with that, we're now going to be getting to the final last bits of news before we move on to the rest of the news for the night. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
You're doing one more question?
Yes.
Okay, caught me off guard a little bit there. I thought we were on our last one on that last one. But anyways, next up, we have a $30 super chat from Phil Tatham. who did not leave a comment. But Phil, thank you very much for your support. That is very generous of you, and thank you for watching for a very long time. And Enforcer, do you want to do one more with a comment attached, or would you like to call it a wrap for this segment?
We'll call it a wrap since you included that one. We'll now move on to the remainder of the news for the night, and we'll make sure to answer every single super chat that's been sent in so far in the final question segment of the night. And also as many live chats as we can. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of the Kharkiv area as well as the Izium and Chuev area, and we're going to be moving down to actually the outskirts of Izium, where we can hear shelling occurring on the outskirts of the town from a Ukrainian cameraman. So here's the video.
Доброе утро, Вьетнам.
You hear the barrages, and you can see one of the Ukrainian soldiers sleeping, because it is an ideal time for sleep. Well, that's the end of the video, but it is a perfect time for sleeping, and we're not really sure whose artillery that is, whether it be the Ukrainians or the Russians, but we can see that activity is still ongoing in the Izium area, and as far as we know, the Ukrainians are making small gains as they retake village by village, heading up towards Izium. Moving on down to the area of Borochine, we can then see a little javelin singing its little song. And so, here's the video. That is not the song that the Javelin sings. It actually sings this one where it shoots a missile out of the tube, and then it travels towards its target. We see it climbing up high, then going down low. I haven't seen it hit yet on film, at least from what I can see. But on drone footage there, we could see a hit. I'm not sure if that's the exact same footage, but still, if it is, pretty impressive. Moving on out of the Izium area, as far as we know, the Ukrainians are making small progress, although we really can't confirm how far that is and how many villages they have retaken over the past 48 hours. We're now going to be moving down to the area of Liman and Slovyansk, where we have seen artillery hitting the Russians here as well. We see a little group of infantry moving down the street. It appears that the footage has been sped up a little. And that music caught me off guard. And that is copyrighted. We see them still moving down the road. And it looks like they've all huddled together for a conference. That conference was then quickly interrupted by Ukrainian artillery. I think they could have gotten the information that they laid out in that conference over email. I don't really think it was required for any of them to come to the office that day, and it definitely backfired on them. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the Liman and Slovyansk area and further down towards the Seversk area. That's kind of developed into a finger from what we can tell on the front line. So, starting off on day 173 near Bila Orivka, we can see that the Ukrainian Marines in the area have given artillery fire once again to the Russians, and it appears that the Russians are not having a good time. Here's a video of the Russian positions in the tree line, and we can see the artillery coming right down into the dugouts. And from what we can tell right there, it looks like a vehicle's on fire. Not really good for the vehicle's longevity. And usually, mechanics say that when your car is on fire, it's usually a sign that the oil needs to be changed. Pretty nice little video, very short, but we could confirm that one vehicle was completely destroyed and one artillery shell landed very close to a BTR, which may have caused moderate damage to it and may have caused a fire that we did not see on screen, so unfortunately we cannot confirm whether that BTR was knocked out or not. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of news, which is more closer to Zolotarivka, where you can see Ukrainian scout ambushing some supply trucks. We can now see the vehicles on the move. Now it looks like this one is full of soldiers. Let's go back real quick and take a look at that. So, trucks are moving. Oh, wait a minute. I think we may have seen that up here. Oh my goodness. Is that one of those German anti-vehicle mines that you can set up and they fire at the road whenever something passes by? Because I think it was. The first vehicle was hit and then goes running off the road. Now we see Ukrainian soldiers with RPGs taking out another vehicle on the road. I can't confirm if that is the footage from the ground of what just happened, because that kind of looks like a tank. We can now see the smiley face logo popping up on screen, and the copyright holders for that meme are most likely going to come get me. We can now see the APC, it appears, here in this clip, burning on the side of the road, letting us know that the Ukrainians have knocked out even another Russian vehicle. With that is the end of the video, and it's pretty nice to see that the Ukrainians in the area are still knocking out Russian vehicles at a pretty steady rate. Moving on closer to Verkno-Kamyanka, which is where the Lysychansk oil refinery is, we can see the Ukrainians firing at the Russians once again. This time, we can see it filmed on DJI drone. We can actually see the Russians there in the tree line. They are kind of lit up in a way from the infrared camera. You see the drone giving us a good look of those Russian forces. And we can now see their artillery coming right down on them. And we can still see some of the heat signatures letting us know that they're still there. You now see the video looping. But as far as we can tell, a couple of Russian soldiers may have been knocked out in that attack, which is once again more Russian forces that cannot push an offensive against the Ukrainians, even if they had the supplies to do so. With that, we haven't seen any offensive action making any ground whatsoever in the Seversk area from either side. It appears that the front line, all the way from Borochne down to the Verkno-Kamyanka area, has not had any progress or any movement whatsoever. Interestingly enough, we've also gotten no news from the Bakhmut area today that we could confirm on video, and so, as far as we know, the front line has stabilized there as well, and attacks are no longer occurring, although I have heard that they are, we just don't have video for them. We're now moving down to the area of Svitlodarsk, again, where we can see an M777 blasting away at Russian troops. And of course I have to mute it, but we can see the Ukrainians here launching drones to get a view of what's ahead of them, and also using the M777s in coordination with the drone to hit targets miles away. There's one of them. And it looks like they're about to give it a little bit of trying to come up with something new to say here. Don't want to repeat the same joke a million times. I think they're about to give them a little bit of syrup. I don't know. I'm just trying to find a new one. We see a BTR right there. And ooh, buddy. I bet you that's going to be target number 1. When you see him pointing at the BTR. Now you can see the M777 firing. And let's see where that artillery hits. Hit a little bit above. That shot was off. Now a BMP is racing down towards the checkpoint. Or maybe racing away. We can now see the M777 firing again. And this time the shell landed a little bit closer to the checkpoint, but on the other side of the road still. And that's the end of the video, so unfortunately we actually couldn't confirm any Russian vehicles being knocked down in this area, but the Ukrainian artillery was engaging Russian units in the Svitlodarsk area as of today, as far as we could tell on video. Moving on out of that area and into the area of Donetsk, we of course haven't gotten a large amount of news from this area. It largely appears that while the Russians are trying to break through the thickly defended Ukrainian lines here, it most likely will never happen. But at Avdiivka, we did see Ukrainian artillery hitting the Russians again. And so here's the video of that. Of course, they got the good music. Well, you can see the Russians moving around, of course, all walking into a destroyed house that they've probably pretty much destroyed through their own design, most likely. And now that we've got the zoomed out video, we all know what's about to happen. There comes the artillery. Shelling is getting a little closer each time. I think the next shot will probably land right on the house. Third time's the charm is what they say. And it was. It was the charm. It hit directly on top of the building. And that's the end of the video. We cannot confirm if the Russians inside of the building were taken out or not, but the Ukrainian artillery once again shows that it is deadly accurate and can hit a pinpoint target from an incredibly long distance. Once again, a massive factor to contribute to why the Ukrainians are able to hold the Russians back in this war, while the Russians struggle to make any kind of ground whatsoever. We're now going to be moving out of the Donbass area as a whole, because beyond that, we don't really have a lot of news to report from in this area. While there's been a decent amount of activity, and of course the Ukrainians are inflicting casualties, it's not really showing that the Ukrainians are taking ground, nor the Russians taking ground either. And so as far as we can tell, the entire front line in the Donbass has remained stagnant over the past 2 days. Moving on beyond the entire southern front, which has had nothing to report over the past 48 hours, we're now at Kherson. So, let's start off on day 173 and then move into day 174. Starting off near the area of Limanets, we saw a Tachka battery firing at the Russians. Of course, this marker is not accurate. We do not know where these actually fired from, but we're assuming that this was in the Kherson area, as it is the closest to most strategic targets that the Russians have. We have to mute that. And we can now see the short-range Tachkas being fired, and they are now on their way to targets deep in Russian territory. With that, that's the end of the video, and I've got to say, a nice one to see, and hopefully those missiles do find the mark. With that, we're now moving on into our second bit of news, where we can see some HIMARS. La 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 la. Hit it, Matthew.
Mars.
Yeah, there we go. And so you can see the HIMARS, a whole battery of them firing at the Russians. The camera work is a little shaky. That's the end of the video, but it is still good to know that the Ukrainian HIMARS are churning out the fire and most likely hitting Russians where it matters. With that, we're now on to our last bit of news from the Kherson front, where we can see that an American volunteer was in a firefight outside of Kherson by several miles. Here's the video of that firefight from his perspective. We can see them dragging back one of the wounded, who's apparently been wounded in this firefight. Hear the bullets screaming all around them.
бегом взяли, подняли, сейчас бегом. Юг, бегом, у нас патронов не хватит. Встали, несем. Сейчас, мув. Встали, несем. Мув.
But you now see them retreating, and it appears that they got into a pretty tough fight right there and had to pull back. Of course, those decisions have to be made. It's obviously not smart to fight to the last man. If it's gotten too tough, you need to back up. So with that, that's the end of that video. And these videos are showing that there is still action occurring in the Kherson area, but it's not showing a lot of it. And as far as we know, the Ukrainian counterattack has not begun, at least the one that's still being alluded to at this point. And we're still waiting for the news, the final bit of news, that a counterattack will be occurring across the length of this front line and hopefully quickly pushing the Russians out. With that, we have now covered all of the news from all the front lines and around the world today. And so, we are now going up to Kyiv, not to go to the speech from President Zelensky, not yet. We actually have a pretty inspiring story from a Ukrainian soldier that was wounded. This soldier in question lost his leg earlier on in the war. He then got a prosthetic, and then he volunteered to go back to the front and continue fighting for Ukraine. It's a very interesting story. It's a very inspiring story. And so without further ado, here's that video from Radio Free Europe, of course, that does great reporting on the war in Ukraine. And so here it is.
У 2021 році під Донецьком в районі населеного пункту Пєски підірвався на протипіхотному вибуховому пристрої. Відповідно, ноги зразу втратив. Мені написали повністю непридатний до військової служби, але я пообіцяв людям, що я вернусь своїм.
Зараз ідуть прильоти, як кажуть, і можуть і цивільні постраждати. Тобто будь-яка особа, що зазнала ампутації верхньої чи нижньої кінцівки, звертається до Центру надання адміністративних послуг або до Управління соціального захисту населення. Його вносять як особу з інвалідністю і вказують, які в нього ампутації, і надають йому направлення на протезування. Пройдемо в зал реабілітації, де ми приймаємо наших відвідувачів, навчаємося тут ходити, і де відбуваються примірочні моменти. І зараз робимо підгоночки всі, щоб комфортно сиділо, щоб була як своя нога, як то кажуть. Надалі ми проходимо виробничий цех. Кукса – це та частина ноги, яка залишилася після ампутації. І саме куксу вони вставляють в куксоприймальну гільзу, по суті, на чому весь протез кріпиться, і це як продовження йде ноги. З цієї кімнати на виході будемо мати протез готовий.
Наприклад, тут у Києві скільки часу потрібно, аби виготовити, на вашу думку, найпростіший протез?
Найпростіше, якщо то можна зранку прийти і ввечері вже вийти на ногах. Не перестаємо захоплюватися всім колективом, це незламністю цих хлопців, незламністю духу. Те, що вони ще, не отримавши протез, не знаючи, як воно що, вони вже кажуть, так, у мене мало времени, у вас тиждень, мені на фронт.
– 24 лютого знаходився вдома в Конотопі на квартирі. Подзвонили 2:30 ночі, визвали на роботу. І вже зупинилися під Черніговом. Там вже розгорнулися і зустрічали повністю противника, зайняли там оборону. Буває важковато, але в принципі можна служити, можна жити повноцінним життям нормально.
with that, that's the end of the video, and it's an incredibly inspiring one at that, to show the true patriotism of the man to have suffered the loss of both of his legs, then having to get prosthetics for them, and then returning back into service, and apparently in a combat unit that did defend the city of Chernihiv back in the earlier days of the war. It's honestly impressive to see, and I have to say, it shows you why the Ukrainians are still winning to this day. So with that, we're now going to be moving across the river to the western side of the Dnipro and the western side of the city of Kyiv. And we're now going to be taking a look at the speech from President Zelensky, which will be rounding out the Day 174 news here on this channel and bringing us right into the question segment, where we're going to answer everyone's live chats, and, well, not everyone's live chats, everyone's super chats, and almost everyone's live chats if we can. And so, with that, here's the speech from President Zelensky on Day 174.
Українці, українки, щодня і щоночі ми бачимо нові повідомлення про вибухи на території, яка тимчасово зайнята окупантами. Я прошу зараз усіх наших людей в Криму, в інших регіонах, на півдні держави, в окупованих районах Донбасу і Харківщини бути дуже уважними. Будь ласка, не наближайтесь до військових об'єктів російської армії і усіх тих місць, де вони зберігають боєприпаси і техніку, де тримають свої штаби. Причини вибухів на окупованій території можуть бути різні, дуже різні, в тому числі, цитую, визначення самих окупантів – головотяпство. Але сенс у них у всіх один – знищення логістики окупантів, їхніх боєприпасів, військової та іншої техніки, командних пунктів рятує життя наших людей. Чим менше буде в окупантів можливості творити зло і вбивати українців, тим швидше ми зможемо закінчити цю війну звільненням нашої землі. І черга цими днями на виїзд з Криму в Росію через мост доводить, що абсолютна більшість громадян держави-терориста вже розуміє або принаймні відчуває, що Крим не місце для них. Я хочу подякувати усім українцям, які допомагають нашим Збройним силам, нашій розвідці, нашим спецслужбам послаблювати армію окупантів. В цьому значна перевага України і першопричина нашої майбутньої перемоги. Боротьба наших захисників базується на безумовній підтримці українського народу. Це народна визвольна війна. Це всеукраїнська боротьба за свободу і незалежність для нашої держави. Україну захищають так чи інакше мільйони. Мільйони людей, які воюють на фронті, які борються за свої міста і села, зокрема і в окупації, які зупиняли техніку окупантів, які інформували і інформують нашу розвідку та спецслужби, які протистоять окупантам в їхньому тилу, які забезпечують необхідне постачання для України і роботу усіх наших державних інституцій та економіки, які волонтерять, які б'ються за наші інтереси за кордоном, які воюють в інформаційній війні. І ми маємо зробити і зробимо все, щоб зберегти цей всенародний фундамент оборони, щоб підтримка України у світі не зменшувалась і щоб наша держава рухалась до перемоги. Має не зменшуватись і наша власна активність абсолютно всіх, хто так чи інакше став на захист нашої держави. Робіть все, як і робили, для України і навіть більше, бо керівництво Росії розраховує, що українці, європейці, увесь світ відчують втому від цієї війни. Ми ж повинні зробити все, щоб втомились не ми і не наші друзі та партнери, а наш ворог. Щоб ми вигнали окупантів з України. Щодня Росії має ставати все складніше воювати. Це наше військово-політичне завдання номер 1. Говорив сьогодні з президентом Франції Еммануелем Макроном, поінформував його про ситуацію навколо Запорізької атомної станції та чергові російські провокації. Подякував за вагому підтримку. Зокрема, обговорили з паном президентом нову безпекову і макрофінансову допомогу нашій державі. Також провів переговори з прем'єр-міністром Данії, теж про посилення фінансової підтримки України, про нові санкції проти Росії. Подякував пані Фредеріксен за оборонну допомогу і за результативну конференцію в Копенгагені, яка нещодавно погодила конкретні рішення для нашого захисту. Вперше в історії наших двосторонніх відносин провів переговори з президентом Замбії. Обговорили співпрацю в міжнародних організаціях, продовольчу безпеку і актуальні глобальні загрози. Сьогодні Україну відвідали пан Гі Мун, 8-й генеральний секретар ООН та Хуан Мануель Сантос, екс-президент Колумбії. Головна тема розмови з ними – це гарантії безпеки для України. Ми робимо все для того, щоб сформувати таку військову, політичну і юридичну архітектуру безпеки для України, яка буде реальною, яка буде дієвою і працюватиме довгостроково, гарантуючи спокій нашим людям. Російська армія цієї доби продовжила абсолютно безглузді, жорстокі обстріли міст Запорізької області та Дніпропетровщини, Оріхів, Нікополь. На жаль, є поранені, на жаль, є жертви. Продовжуються обстріли Харкова, прикордонних районів, але все це нічого не дасть окупантам і не зламає наш опір. Наші герої відбивають постійні і дуже потужні атаки на Донбасі. Окупанти там застосують все. Авіацію, ракети, фосфорні бомби, артилерію. Тривають дуже жорстокі бої. Маємо пройти через це, витримати все і вибороти життя. Україна має перемогти, і це буде. Підписав сьогодні указ про нагородження наших захисників. 189 воїнів відзначено державними нагородами, 158 військовослужбовці Нацгвардії, з них 21 посмертно, 26 прикордонників, з них 2 посмертно, 3 поліцейських, з них 2 посмертно, 2 працівника Державної митної служби, з них 1 посмертно. Вічна пам'ять усім, хто віддав життя за Україну. Вічна слава усім нашим героям. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Zelensky, and that rounds out our news segment for day 174, and we'll begin our question segment as well. I thank you all so much once again for watching. If you're here for the news alone, please make sure to subscribe, because these streams run every single day of the week except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and we go over the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine, except for Tuesdays, which is today, where we go over the past 48 hours since we did skip the Monday stream. So with that, thank you all so much once again for watching, and I'm also going to let Matthew segue us into the polls that he's been throwing up, and also the question segment itself. And so take it away, Matthew.
All right, folks, and moving into our final segment of the stream, the final question segment. Up first, we do have that poll that the enforcer mentioned, and the question was, after watching the poorly trained Russian soldiers and conscripts, do you have any sympathy for them? It looks like 59% of you said no sympathy for the Russians at all. 21% said sympathy only for conscripts, and 20% said sympathy for all sides in the war. Now, for me personally, it was a little bit of a difficult choice. I was debating between sympathy only for conscripts and the no sympathy for the Russians at all, because it's kind of hard to have sympathy for all sides, because there's usually one right and one wrong. But I would have to go with the sympathy only for conscripts, just because some of them do not have an option on getting into the military, and they're put into that position unwillingly. But Enforcer, what are your thoughts?
In this specific instance, according to the Russians' official statement, there are no conscripts in Ukraine. Everyone there is a contract soldier. And so in that perspective, I would have to actually side with the 60% of people who say they have no sympathy for the Russian soldiers there at all, because by the Russians' official statement, there shouldn't be conscripts there for me to have to worry about dispensing with some sympathies for them. They're all contract soldiers. They're all there by their own accord. And there may be the couple of exceptions where they were kind of forced into signing a contract, but by and large, most of them are there by choice. And we can even see, since pretty much them being children, like we saw in the video earlier in Moscow, a lot of them are raised into this kind of mindset and maybe committing these war crimes just believing that they're doing the right thing, and these people are standing in the way of Russia truly becoming what it should be. There are no borders, only horizons according to the Russians. And so in that perspective, knowing that there are supposed to be no conscripts in this war, I would have to say I don't really give any sympathy to any of the Russian soldiers that are currently in Ukraine. I do give sympathy, though, to the citizens of Russia, because there are people in Russia that clearly do not support this war and have definitely paid the price for vocally saying that in public. And so with that, we're going to be moving on into the next, we're going to be moving on to the first question of the night, and I hope y'all understand where I'm coming from. Of course, we throw up multiple, completely different options from each other in these polls, because we want y'all to actually vote for what y'all believe in. You know, it's not supposed to be rigged or anything, and I'm not trying to make y'all think that because I think that or Matthew thinks another way that y'all have to pick either side. Everyone's free to have an opinion in those regards, and I highly support it. And so with that, we are now into the first question of the night.
All right, and the first one is from Trademarks and Patents for Growing Businesses, a long-time channel supporter and legend, who puts in a $50 donation and says, suggestion, after Zelensky's nightly speech, please post the updated Russian losses. Also, could you tomorrow show a satellite image of the damages at the air bases and ammo depots, maybe a short video?
And I might be able to do that, Trademarks and Patents. Also, thank you for the huge amount of support. Now, the losses thing after the speech, I could certainly do. But the one about the satellite images of the damage at the specific air base that happened today at the Zhangkoi, most likely couldn't, because we just have to wait for whenever that comes out, and I'm not sure if it would be out tomorrow. But if you're talking about the Saki airfield and making a short video on that, it could be possible. I'm not entirely sure. It depends on what my schedule looks like tomorrow with things I have to do before the stream. But it might be something we could do. So just keep y'all's fingers crossed, everyone, because we might actually come out with a short video tomorrow that might talk about it. But honestly, with it being such a short production time and having to put effort into explaining what happened, it might be a little bit too difficult to do in a single day. And also, just for those of y'all who do not know, I don't know if y'all will be able to hear this in the microphone, but if you hear those papers rustling, I have been doing a lot of research, and I've been writing down a lot of notes for an upcoming video. You will probably not get an official release date for this video. It will just drop on the channel whenever it actually pops up. But the video and its concept is an invasion of Taiwan possible? And so I've been doing a lot of research today. I've actually pulled up specific classes of amphibious landing ships that the Chinese have, calculating the total amount of cargo and soldiers and equipment that it can transport to Taiwan. And I've got to tell y'all, based off of the numbers I've been getting here for the initial landing force, it looks like it would be pretty minuscule, actually, in its actual effect, even if it was able to make it to the islands at all, which I'm getting to that research right now on Taiwan's anti-ship missiles, as well as their air defense batteries, because while Taiwan's army, from what I can tell research-wise, is aging terribly, everything else in the Taiwanese military is pretty up to date. But with that, not going down that too far, I hope you do understand that there may be some limitations about making a short video like that tomorrow, Trademarks and Patents, but I do thank you so much once again for the support. You've been around forever. I mean, like, ever since the literal first days of this channel, I remember you being here. And I have to thank you so much for sticking with us for this long, 174 days. And also, enjoying the news that we deliver and our presentation as well. And so with that, I hope that does address the question. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 donation from Jose Diaz, who's also been around the channel for quite some time. And Jose, thank you very much for your support. And he says, I am back from vacation and never stop thanking and praying for our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. Gloria a Ukrainia.
And thank you so much for the support. And I do have to say that y'all probably definitely know that I never stop thinking about the Ukrainians because, look, I'm here 6 days a week, every week. But I do thank you so much for the support, and I'm glad that you are keeping the Ukrainians in your mind. And also, welcome back from the vacation. I hope it's been enjoyable, and I hope you were able to get a little bit of a refreshing break before you had to come back and get back into the real world again of working and also this war. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. It does help us out a lot in helping to keep this channel running. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and yes, thank you very much for your support. And next up, we have a $20 donation from Mayamatic, I believe is how it's pronounced, who does not leave a comment. Also, we have a $20 donation from D. Shaw, who's been around for a very long time. So thank you very much to both of you for your support. We know you don't leave comments, but we appreciate your support nonetheless. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Tim F., who says, about the counteroffensive, it is ongoing, but it is all flat land over there. The Russians are now in defensive positions. I think the Ukrainians are just waiting for the right moment for final push.
Well, thank you very much for the support, but I don't, in my honest opinion, I don't like that kind of story. In my opinion, if that is actually the way it's going, because it makes it sound like the Ukrainians have gotten bogged down in that area, and they're trying to, and understand when I'm saying this. I'm saying this in an unbiased perspective. That's kind of similar to what the Russians say sometimes, which is, oh, we're not making a lot of progress in Severodonetsk and Lysychansk because we haven't really pulled out all the stops yet and really just given them all we got. Because we do know that there's a media blackout in the Kherson area, which adds a whole extra layer to this specific area, which is that the Ukrainians may have gone all out for a week or 2 weeks, and we wouldn't know because they are currently controlling the videos that come out from that area. And so we've hardly got any videos to show anything going on. We know that they retook Viskapelia, but beyond that, we don't really know the kind of effort that they originally put in and whether they weren't able to make ground and they met some kind of stiff Russian defense there or not. So I do see what you're saying, and that may be true. That may be what they're doing. But I have seen that other sources that I've been looking at occasionally are saying that the counteroffensive has not actually happened at all, and it's still coming up. And it's going to be happening within the next few weeks. So I'm not exactly sure what is happening with the counterattack anymore, whether it has happened or not. But still, it is interesting to see the action is continuing on in some way or form. And also, thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment, at least in my opinion, because while I am pro-Ukrainian, I always just look at things in terms of the war in an unbiased perspective. So everyone please understand that, because I know someone's about to sit there and say, ugh, and like take great offense to what I said. One does have to understand that sometimes the story does have to be twisted a little bit on both sides, and if it didn't go well after all of that lead up and build up to it, that may be something that the Ukrainians may have done in this situation as well. Although I am still hoping that I will be proven wrong on this very vague assumption, and that a large counteroffensive or a final push, as you're saying, will be happening within the next few weeks or the next few months, and push them all the way back across the Dnipro River. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope it does address the question. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from W, who says, I wish I could be in little Sasha's 6th grade class when he goes back to school and tells all his classmates about his summer trip to Crimea. I'm sure his family had a blast. La 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 la.
And thank you so much for the support. And I do have to say that little Sasha down there at Saki, he's going to have such a fun time going back to school, and he's going to be telling all of his friends, hey, I saw the war happening in real life, and the Ukrainians got blasted and blown up, and it was right outside of where I was. It was massive explosions. And while he's saying this, the teachers are going to grab him by the collar and start dragging him out of the classroom, and they're going to probably get him in trouble. Do not talk about that. But I do thank you so much for the support, and I do have to say that those Russians that were in Crimea during both of those attacks are going back, and good and well that they're telling stories of what happened, and people are going to start connecting the dots. And so I thank you so much once again for the support, and also bringing that up again. That was a pretty funny way to put it. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support.
And also, folks, real quick, please remember to try to answer that poll that I have up. I'm going to go over the results of it in about 2 or 3 more questions to give everybody a chance to answer that poll. So I'll be very interested to see what the results are. And next up, we have a $20 super chat from Eduardo Gonzalez, who says, scuttlebutt is that the orcs do not want to admit that the strikes inside Crimea are from HIMARS, ATACMS missiles, because if they plan they do, then they are tactically, I think you might say tactically admitting that their anti-missile defense is not up to par.
That may be the case, but there's also something, and I have never said this on stream, this is something that I've been thinking about the ATACMS that may be at play. The United States may have actually sent Ukraine ATACMS missiles, and they're never going to officially declare it. So that way, when they're used in Crimea, well, used by Ukraine against the Russians anywhere, the Russians do not have to sit there and then uphold their obligation of saying if America sends ATACMS, they're in the war too. And the Russians may actually know that these are ATACMS missiles that are being used. And since it's never been officially stated, they can sit there and say, oh, small accident. And then when it finally comes out and they can't really lie about it anymore, they go, oh, well, actually, it was a Ukrainian short-range ballistic missile. And then I could be wrong with that assumption. That's very deep, intrinsical kind of thought, and I might be entirely wrong. Because that could be a HIMARS that's hitting those targets. I'm out of the three options I have in my head, a HIMARS, an ATACMS, or espionage. Espionage is number 3, ATACMS is number 2, and the HIMARS is the number 1 option. It just seems like the most puzzle piece fitting answer to this whole equation, is that's most likely HIMARS that are being used. So I still think it's that, but it could also be an ATACMS, and that could be the reason why they are not really sitting there and saying anything about them definitively being ATACMS. And also the other thing is that it may be, from what you're saying, which is entirely true as well, is that it's showing that their missile defense systems are completely inadequate. They can't even stand up against any kind of missile for that matter. And so everything in Crimea is vulnerable to attack, which is also something that they wouldn't like to admit publicly either. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support. That was a really interesting idea to actually consider, and I hope that I was able to add a little bit something to it, and also take a look at it. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we were able to answer that question fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And moving on, we have a $40 super chat from George A., who sadly does not leave a comment. But George, that is very generous of you to put that $40 in to help the channel keep running, and I'm sure the Enforcer has something he would like to add as well.
And yes, I would like to thank you so much for supporting this channel, because not only does it help keep the lights on, but it helps me to buy donuts, buy coffee, buy gas, buy pickles, buy chicken sandwiches. I mean, like, we have a fund for everything these days, and you did not earmark that for a specific fund, but we will be making sure to distribute that as a whole a fund approach, and make sure that it is distributed amongst them all equally, so that way we can make sure to keep all the funds running. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope I was able to address that one pretty well, although there wasn't really a comment attached. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have yet another super chat from Trademarks and Patents for Growing Businesses, who puts in a $20 donation this time, and says, question, if you were Ukrainian general in charge, what conditions on the ground, whether intel, aid received, economic conditions, etc., would prompt you to retake Kherson Oblast?
Oh, that has a lot of moving parts in it, but I'll try and answer that as best as I can. We all know that the area around Kherson is flat. If you look at this land, it is flat all the way. It just goes on forever and ever, and really the only places you can move is on these tree lines in between the fields, because it's really the only suitable area where you can kind of hide stuff, and hardly even well. But with that in mind, I would wait until the ground got very slushy, because one thing that I can promise you, so if you look in this area up here, north of Kherson, you can see that there's no major roads through it. In fact, there aren't really even any paved roads at all. And even if there are, they're incredibly small in size. And so once the Rasputitsa comes in, the Ukrainians will have the advantage, because they use less vehicles. And the Russians use massive amounts of vehicles, so their doctrine relies on their use. I would also wait for more frontline artillery pieces, just a little bit more. I think the Ukrainians have a pretty decent bit right now. And I would also try and wait for maybe... This is a tough one, because it seems like armor is practically useless in the current war, but I would try and wait on some more armor to be brought down into the specific area at the front line, and then try a major push towards Kherson. Also, one other thing is that you can never understate the fact that the HIMARS destroying the bridge crossings at the right time, not at the beginning of the offensive, but at the right time in the offensive, would be crucially important, or at least destroy some of the smaller, more minor bridges like this one here over the lock, where it constantly has to be repaired and logistics are having a massive buildup there, so that way the supplies are never consistently coming into the Russians, so they have a way to retreat, a path of retreat, but at the same time they're not getting enough supplies to actually hold. So with that, I hope that does answer the question. Once again, take it with a grain of salt because those are a lot of variables, and it's very hard to sit down and consider all of them unless if I had pen and paper and we're going over all of the supply requirements, the equipment requirements, the force size, and all that kind of stuff, which is what I do. That's what I'm doing right now with the Taiwan video. Which y'all probably won't see any of this math on stream. Like, just to give an example of the notes I have. The Chinese have 2 Type 75s, carries 3 hovercraft, 2 LCUs, or 12 LCMs, based off of the USS Wasp, since figures are not public on the Type 75. Around 30 helicopters, it's estimated that it could carry 1,200 troops and disembark them via the hovercraft or the landing craft. It also has a single close-in weapon system, and all kinds of crap like that. And I did that for every single amphibious landing ship in the freaking Chinese Navy. It took forever to do, but I actually found out a lot, and it's surprisingly the case that there is hardly any anti-ship missile defense systems in the Chinese Navy to speak of. You could really destroy most of these ships with a harpoon, and there really would be no resistance to it. Just slam into the ship and sink it. But still, anyways, getting off of that, that's the kind of research I usually do to go into specifics like this, and unfortunately, I cannot do that midstream, but I hope I did answer it fairly well. And I also saw you, Trademarks and Patents, say, great answer, looks similar to the hedgerow battle in Normandy, the bocage in World War II, and Dnipro's like the Rhine. If he puts together a short with all that research in it, it'll go viral. And I thank you for the confidence, Trademarks and Patents. It seems like you want some more videos on this war, and we will look into doing that. But I would love to put out a video on Taiwan because I know a lot of people want to know about it. And also, I have done loads of research today on it, probably about 6 to 5 hours worth. And so with that, we are on to the next question. Thank you once again for the support. I hope you were pretty happy with the answer.
And before we move on to our next super chat, we need to go over the poll. And the question was, why do you think Russian soldiers are willing to leave their comrades behind in a war zone? Now, it looks like the results are pretty evenly distributed for the most part, but a little bit of a variation. We have 37% saying that they don't care about the comrades. We have 24% saying they did not want to fight, and also 24% saying that they are cowardly and ran off, and 15% said they are following orders to do so. Now, for me personally, I would fall within the 24% that said they are cowardly and ran off. And I will say to an extent, if they're poorly trained, that's understandable. However, I just can't even fathom running off and leaving one of your fellow soldiers behind. That seems unimaginable. But then again, I haven't been in a war zone, but I couldn't see myself doing that. But Enforcer, what are your thoughts?
I just think they don't care. I'd have to actually agree with the 37% on that one, because we've seen videos like, for example, the Chechens that had the guy bleeding out right beside him, and they just laughed at him like, look, he's bleeding, and then he just died. And I honestly think they just could care less about each other. They're not necessarily following orders because there's no order on the spot, like once someone gets their legs blown off, like, hey, you can't help him, let's keep moving. Because you'll see that they're all confused and they're all just running for the ditches and stuff. So I honestly just think that they care less about their own soldiers, and they don't really care about their well-being. Speaking of which, as an actual example, I watched a video that was not included on the stream because it has nothing to do with the war, but I watched a video of a Taliban sniper shooting an American soldier in the thorax, and it took the guy out, and unfortunately I think the guy lost his life a little bit later on beyond the video. But the American soldiers that were there, even knowing that a sniper had just shot that guy, one of them ran forward, grabbed the guy by his rig, and dragged him out of the street. And that's something that a Russian soldier would not do. If they saw one of their people get shot and fall in the street, they would have left that guy to die right there or get finished off. So I know for sure that they just don't care. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, at least in, well, the poll, at least in my perspective. And once again, it's just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from White Lightning 777, who says, a lot of this Russian world and peace ideology seems to be backed by theocrats in the Russian Orthodox Church. Can this church be designated as a terrorist organization?
Yeah, I don't really think so, because we've never done that, I believe, to any particular religion. There's a lot of political implications with doing that for pretty much a whole religion. I think we may have done that with. I don't even think we have done that with what's his name in Iran. Do you know the official title, Matthew?
The Ayatollah?
Yeah, the Ayatollah. I don't think we've done that with him, have we?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I think we might have. I'm not really sure though.
It's the Ayatollah, considered a terrorist. Oh, let's see here. Is Iran considered terrorist? Yes, it is. We already knew that, but I'm trying to find something about the Ayatollah. Ayatollah, terrorist group. I want to make sure I'm saying this truthfully here because I don't want to be saying anything incorrect. So it looks like right here from the Brookings.edu. Will it load? Let's see here. 1979, let's see. Saudi Arabia, blah, 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 blah. Let's see. Ayatollah. We're looking for the Ayatollah. World's leading state supporter of terrorism. A dubious status, but one it holds to this day. I don't really, I don't think it's dubious because they kind of fund everyone in the Middle East who does anything. Let's see.
And Enforcer, press the back button for just a moment. I think I saw something on the main page. On that, let's see here. Yeah, it looks like the second link. It looks like it says Supreme Leader Ayatollah, who controls the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. Let's see, was designated by the previous administration as a terrorist organization.
But it's saying that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is a terrorist organization. It's not saying anything specifically about the Ayatollah, which is more of a religious figure than a military figure. And I think the precedent out there right now is that we've never officially declared any religious group a terrorist organization or even a subset of any religion a terrorist organization. We've never done that with the Sunni or the Shiite Muslims as like specific dominations of Islam. We've never done that with, say, the Catholic Church. There's never been a reason for us to do that, but you know, if you're British, I guess the argument could be made in the Troubles that it could have been considered one, specifically in the Irish instance. But I haven't seen anyone do that ever really in the modern day, and so I don't think you could really call the Moscow, I believe it's the Patriarchy, if that's the official name, the Moscow, want to make sure that's correct too, Patriarchy, Patriarchate, the Patriarch Kirill of Moscow. So, yes, I don't think you could specifically label that as a terrorist organization. You could label groups attached to them, like military, or like militia groups or something like that, as terrorist organizations. But it appears that the precedent so far is that you can never directly come out and call those people a terrorist organization, because that means that we would be labeling Eastern Orthodox Christians in the United States terrorists if they were subscribed to the Moscow Patriarch, although they might not even necessarily agree with them. So with that, I hope that kind of answers the question away. And once again, take it with a grain of salt, because that's just based off of our quick research, and we may be wrong. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support, and I hope we were able to answer that question fairly well.
And next up, we have a $14 super chat from Martin Van Oon, who says, "Thanks so much, Enforcer and all, for the coverage."
And thank you so much once again for the support. We try our best to make sure that the coverage is good, and I'm glad that you do enjoy it and that you're helping us to keep this stuff running. If it wasn't for y'all, it wouldn't be possible. And so, I hope I was able to address that one fairly well, and thank you so much once again. And so with that, we are on to the next one. I also saw someone just say something real quick. The ATF did burn all those people at Waco. The Branch Davidians, unlike the Moscow Patriarchy or the Sunnis, the Shiites, the Catholics, or anyone like that, was a cult comprising of a few hundred people, I believe, at most. And so they didn't get the status of an official religion in the United States for them to kind of be considered like that. So I know the specific event you're talking about, but they're not as big as, say, the Moscow Patriarch. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And real quick, I saw Eduardo Gonzalez say in the live chat, "Did we not do that to the Taliban?" And he's referring to labeling them as a terrorist organization, I assume. And Eduardo, I'm not really sure. I think we were just working with them for whatever reason a while back, so I'm not really sure.
We did label the Taliban, and also, well, not the Mujahideen, I believe, but the Taliban we did label as a terrorist organization for harboring other terrorists like Osama bin Laden within Afghanistan. But the thing is that the Taliban is not a official religious sect of Islam. That's a little bit of a difference there. It's like ISIS, because ISIS in itself, as a territory like it was back in the late 2010s, it wasn't an actual religion. Like, you couldn't say I'm a member of the Church of ISIS, or I'm a member of the Church of or the mosque, or whatever they call it in the Muslim world, of the Taliban. You couldn't say that. It's like a governmental group or an organization, and so you could label them as terrorist groups. Like, you could label Al-Qaeda as a terrorist group, but Al-Qaeda isn't a denomination of Islam, much like the Irish Revolution. Well, no, I think it's the Irish Republican Guard or whatever, isn't really a sect of Catholicism. And so with that, I hope that kind of answers the question a little bit better, and we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $14 super chat from Shannon Curry, or Curie. I think it's Curie. I think I'm mispronouncing it every single night. But thank you, Shannon, for the support. And she says, you and Matt are captured by Putin's henchmen and sentenced to 6 months forced labor. Now, option one, either perfecting Mr. Lunchtime's favorite recipes for a cookbook, or as Seagull's Aikido dojo sparring partner. Which do you choose? Well, Shannon, I would have to say, between those two horrible options, I would have to pick perfecting Mr. Lunchtime's favorite recipes, because I would have access to the food. And also, I don't know if I could handle going through that theatrical mumbo jumbo that Seagull is doing. I couldn't bear that for too long. So definitely, I'd perfect the recipes.
I would probably have to side with Matthew there, because perfecting the recipes just seems a whole lot easier than having to literally fling myself through the air for the amusement of Seagull. So I would have to actually agree with Matthew on that one. So I hope we were able to answer that question pretty well, and that was a pretty good joke. Also, another thing, I don't know if y'all see this, but this one was funny to me. John McBurney said, the branch wasn't a cult. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not from the area. If I pull up Branch Davidians,
oh no.
Now I don't mean to be rude and call people out individually, but when someone says I need to learn what I'm talking about, I think they were a cult. I think the United States government officially labeled them a cult as well. But let's just take a look. Let's see. I mean, if you know anything about it, the guy had a harem of women, so that's usually what a cult does. Let's see here. It came to Newmount, study biblical prophecy. They gained a new group of followers. There's David Koresh, which is a famous name if you ever look at the Siege of Waco. Let's see here. We'll go to this. Branch Davidians, are they a cult?
I guess, Enforcer, the more important question would be, is the person that put that in the live chat connected to them in any way?
That's actually a good question. And I think the answer would have to be some way, because there's no way you could say they weren't a cult. I mean, they literally lived in a compound and didn't leave it. And on top of that, they believed the world was going to end and only they were going to leave. It's almost like they were literally just one step away from drinking Kool-Aid. And so if that's not a cult to you, I don't know what is. Let's see. Is the Branch Davidians a cult? Experts still debate whether the Branch Davidians were in fact a cult. Though the dominant narrative at the time of the siege was that Koresh was a sketchy cult leader, there has never been a consensus about whether the group was a legitimate cult. Well, apparently if the question is open to debate, there is some pretty decent ground to say it was a cult. So maybe you need to learn a little bit more about it, and who cares if I'm from the area? Do I have to live in Ukraine to be able to talk about the war or something? I mean, that was a pointless statement. Anyways, we're going to move on to the next one. I hope you enjoy your Kool-Aid. And so with that, let's move on to the next question.
And I just saw somebody saying in the live chat, aren't the Leaf Spring Army a cult?
No, because I'm not telling y'all I'm like the son of God or anything. So we're on to the next one.
All right. And next up, we have a $20 super chat from W once again. And thank you very much for your continued support. And they say, I wish Mr. Lunchtime would go smoke some special cigarettes with Steven Seagal and Amnesty International.
Man, okay, good point. But if Mr. Lunchtime ever got access to cigarettes, it's going to take the entire tobacco growing capacity of the Commonwealth of Virginia to be able to get him a single cigar of size of proportionate size to his weight for him to actually be able to enjoy a smoking session. So I don't know.
Or Enforcer, he could get like 10 cigarettes, put a rubber band around them, and smoke them all at the same time.
Wait a minute. I know what you're talking about. Giant cigarette. Smoking. Let's see if that pulls that up. Oh my god, there's giant cigarettes! Jeez, look at that! Oh, wait a minute, that's a fake one on its stand.
That's fake.
I've got to find massive cigarettes. 1 second. Here's one. That's the one that Mr. Lunchtime would need right there.
That looks like a marine buoy.
Yeah, it does. Look at this one. This looks like a marker.
That's mobile cancer.
Man. Oh, let's see if we can find another one. Cigarette. Let me see if I can put in a giant cigarette pinwheel. Maybe that'll pull up what I'm looking for. Nope. Cigarette pinwheel. Nope. Apparently not. Cigarette chain smoking. Here we go. That's what Mr. Lunchtime would need right there to be able to smoke with everyone. But
or that fellow down there with the 4 cigarettes in his mouth.
Yeah, that one. And then there's that kid, you know, the chain smoking kid that was on news years ago. And then they got him off of that, and then he started like binge drinking. But anyways, with that, I hope that kind of gives a little bit of input as to how many cigarettes Mr. Lunchtime would need. And Steven Seagal, he would probably do something stupid, like he would get there and they would give him a cigarette and he'd say, "I had a special experience. I'm now the magic man of yore, and I cannot smoke cigarettes," or something. Because there's always weird stories of him like that. And so with that, I hope that answers the question. Thank you once again for the support and the pretty good joke. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $13 super chat from Olivia McCarthy, who says, I want to start a new saying, not Slava Ukraine, but I'm going to butcher this, I know it. Rosia Idi du Bisa. I'll let you translate. And actually, so the Enforcer can translate it. I'm going to copy and paste that into the live chat. Hopefully it's nothing bad, because here it is in the live chat.
Okay, I'm not getting political or anything there by saying this, but for some reason that reminds me of whenever Boris Johnson would say anything that was supposed to be from a foreign language. I wish you all a grand Idi you know, or something like that. And that's in the English or the Cyrillic?
Looks like English.
Unfortunately, we cannot translate that, but I do thank you for the support, and if we could get a translation to that, I would be greatly appreciative. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and we'll consider it.
And real quick, let me paste that here. So I just translated it. It looks like it's Russian, and translated to English, it says, Russia, go to the encore.
Encore? All right, we'll put that one under advisement. I thank you very much for the support. I mean, that might not be a direct translation of it. I feel like
Probably
it's not. But we will think about it. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And next up, we have an $11.22 donation from Mike D, who says, do you think before the fall season, Russia will attempt a last-effort blitz? Would Putin draft 1 million citizens, give them all Nagants, roll in, and just take over territory by sheer numbers?
I don't think so, because while you could give them all Nagants and maybe a little bit of ammo, you certainly couldn't give them anything to eat, most likely. That would be far too difficult. So they would probably all just end up starving out there. So I don't think that would be possible, and I don't think they're going to try in one last blitz, because everyone's always looking for the Russians to do this one big push thing. Like, that's been around since the start of the war. There's literally a song that the Russians have in their military song repertoire called "We Need Only One Victory." Literally, the whole song is about, we just need only one victory, just one big push. You can see it right here. You can pull it up and listen to it. But anyways, moving on from that, I don't think they will, just because they don't have the logistic ability to really carry out any more big pushes for the foreseeable future. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, at least in short. There's not really a lot to add to it. That's just my opinion. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And Enforcer, when was that song made?
Oh, it was made a long time ago. I think it was actually made in the 40s. We need only one victory, which was really what the Soviets needed. Wait a minute, 1970 song.
1970.
Composed by Bulat Ukuzava, with lyrics by Bulat Ukuzava. Wow, they got a lot of people collaborating on that song. Anyways, there's the answer to that question.
It looks like the Russians have been begging for one victory since 1970 at least, because they're making songs about it.
Yeah, and you know, they were singing that in Afghanistan, Chechnya, and now they're singing it in Ukraine, and they were also singing it in Georgia for a little bit down there. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have that $10 donation from WF2U, and also he cracked the Morse code along with Mark Hodges and C. Fay, our decoders of the stream, and they say the coordinates are to a warehouse in Kamyanka, and the message is Ukrainians' balls are made of brass because they're turning Crimea into glass.
And I thank you so much for the support. Ding, 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 ding. You are correct. I didn't really have a good idea for the Morse code message today, so I thought I would come up with something that rhymed and was kind of a little funny. So I'm glad you were able to get that. And yes, the little warehouse that was on the coordinates today is in that specific town. Unfortunately, I can't really remember the name. Can you tell me the name of it again real quick, Matthew?
The warehouse in Kamyanka?
Kamyanka. Let me find that real quick. In the Cherkasy Oblast. Wait a minute. Nope, that ain't it. This isn't it. It's another Kamyanka. And another Oblast, I'm sure of it. In the Donetsk Oblast. Niet. It's not. Let's go to another one. You know, Ukraine only has about 5 different Kamyankas. It's not really too hard. Well, that's the wrong one, too. You know what? I'm just going to give up on that. You did get it correct, though. So, congratulations on getting that Morse code message correct. I do remember the specific Kamyanka. I just forgot exactly where it is on the map. And so with that, we're going to be moving on to the next one. And congratulations on reading the Morse code every single night. It's actually really impressive to know that we have people who can actually do that off the top of their heads. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Alex Wolf, who says, "The world should tremble. Russia's technological advancement was shown in full force. You can have your own Russian-China robotic dog coming to a Walmart near you, or a dollar store."
And I would have to say it is very scary to think that the Russians are now getting into the budget market. Before you know it, they're going to be flooding American stores with all these robots blasting people away with RPGs. It is honestly a scary thought. And I thank you so much for the support. And also the pretty funny joke there, because I do love a joke. I don't know about y'all, but jokes help me to get through this war. And so thank you so much once again for the support and the pretty good joke right there, because I would have to say the dog was pretty stupid. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from William Mitchell, who says, "What about all these announced counterattacks being a way to lure Russian forces into zones before the rainy season to fix their positions, then destroy them when the ground is too soft to retreat?"
That could be a consideration that the Ukrainians are doing, and they may also be doing all of this hype to just move Russian forces into this area to get ready for a counterattack here, and then a counterattack happens somewhere else. I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen, because it does seem kind of weird that the Ukrainians have been broadcasting this for what seems like months at this point. So it may have ulterior motives behind it, but I'm not entirely sure. So with that, I would have to say that considering that the Rasputista season is coming in, that may be something that they're considering, is getting a large amount of forces in this area on paved roads, and then beginning a counterattack somewhere else and just diverting them, or getting them onto the muddy ground and then trying to push over it where the Russians really can't do much to stop them, rather than sit on the main roads and wait to be destroyed. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question in a way, and thank you so much once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Santiago Flores, who says, "If the F-16 goes to Ukraine's Air Force, they would have to receive some support from Poland, Romania, and Czechoslovakia that would put them on the hit list with Putin. Cheers.
Can you reread that one real quick?
Yes, Santiago said if the F-16 goes to the Ukraine Air Force, they would have to receive some support from Poland, Romania, and Czechoslovakia that would put them on the hit list with Putin. Cheers.
Well, I thank you for the support once again, Santiago. And I'm not really sure what support you're speaking about for the F-16, but still, that's something that I kind of consider that the Czechs, the Slovaks, the Poles, and the Romanians are kind of already on. I think they're already on a hit list because all of them are former Warsaw Pact countries, and specifically Poland used to be a part of the Roman Empire at a time. And so I would have to say they're already probably on the hit list, so I don't think they'd have to worry about it all too much. But I thank you so much once again for the support, and I do hope that one day we see American F-16s and F-15s in the Ukrainian Air Force pretty much controlling the skies over Ukraine at that point. And so with that, we are on to the next one. I hope I was able to address that comment pretty well, Santiago, and thank you so much for being a longtime member and veteran of this Leaf Spring Army.
And moving right along, we have a $10 super chat from Volodymyr Yaskulka, who says the robotic toy is called Unitree Go 1, and it's $2,700 USD.
Interesting. What's that thing called again?
The Unitree Go, U-N-I, and then the word tree, Go 1.
Well, I be dipped. There it is. That's the exact dog. Yeah, that's it. This one's $3,500. Let's see if we can. How much did you say it was worth?
$2,700.
And there it is. Yep, it's $2,700 for the dog. How much for the dog? This is actually more expensive than a normal dog. I think it would just be cheaper to strap an RPG to a corgi and let it do the work. But it's pretty interesting. Oh, look. Oh, I can smell a flower. Like a robot could do that. How cute. Anyways, moving on. Wow. It really just is a knockoff dog. It looks like something Boston Dynamics has produced. It really does.
Wait a minute. Go back up to that video of it running fast. That looks like that's been sped up or something, I tell you. There's no way that thing goes that fast. That looks so fake.
That thing be scooting. What's the other one here? Oh, look, it's got a neon light kit on it.
That looks really creepy from that angle.
It really does. I don't like that thing. But they are kind of cheap. They are only $2,700, but I still don't get. Let's see. The payload, 3 kilograms. How much does an RPG? RPG 24, I think it is. RPG 29. That's not it. RPG 22. That's not the specific one. But how much does this thing weigh? It weighs 2.8 kilograms loaded. But I need to find the specific RPG that we saw in that little clip. Why'd they have to name everything RPG? It makes it really difficult to find it. RPG types. A role-playing game. I don't want to know about that. I want to know about the different RPG types. If we could get that. Well, also they're going to show us all of the RPG 7s. That's kind of close. We're looking for the other one.
There's one for sale.
Oh, for real? Oh, it is? Look at that. It's kind of incomplete, though. It looks like it's missing some parts, but it is an RPG. RPG 26, that's what we're looking for. RPG 26. Yes. That is the one. How much does it weigh? 1.8 kilograms. So, that dog could carry it. Could carry it just... Well, actually, it can carry it pretty reasonably, but my question is, this dog is carrying nothing in any of these videos, rather than some groceries. And I don't think this thing can handle the recoil of an RPG you fired. And also, I still don't understand the advantage that this would give anyone. Considering it's so low to the ground, it could probably hardly even look over tall grass to be able to fire it. So I don't know what the advantage is still, but anyways, the dog is pretty dumb. I've had a lot of people say that tonight, and I do entirely agree. It's the stupidest thing I have ever seen, and they already know it's stupid because they had to cover it up in black fabric so that way you didn't know it was a cheap Chinese knockoff Boston Dynamics dog. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support.
And next up, we have another super chat from Volodymyr Yaskulka, who puts in another $10 donation and says, these were called Hitlerjugend in Hitler's time, and there's some Russian, and he said it was called this in Russian.
Well, thank you very much for the support, and also, that is true that the Nazis kind of had a similar little organization called the Hitlerjugend, which is also in English called the Hitler Youth. Hitler Youth. Anyways, might get censored there for that, but when you see them all here having a little bit of fun with some rifles, and you can kind of get the picture, very similar to what the Russians were doing. We can also see a whole bunch of them here, and you can kind of see the same level of indoctrination that the Germans were doing back in the 30s, happening to Russian kids today. And then you can see the end result, which I always find to be a pretty funny one, because we just put them all into a courtroom, the ones that were left, and said, you know, we're just doing this to make it look nice, but you're going to be hanging tomorrow. And then this guy decided to kill himself in a cell, and he got a little bit of help with that, which kind of was a cop-out. But anyways, moving on from that, I thank you so much for the support, and that is true, that it is incredibly similar to the Hitlerjugend. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Winston Segner, who says, thank you and your brother for all you do. And thank you as well, Winston.
And thank you so much once again, Winston, for the support. We try our best, and I'm glad that you are appreciative of the effort we put into this to try and make sure that it is good news and interesting news every single night. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Anthony K. Smith, who says, also, the TV tower, a Kyiv-based commentator, said a Ukrainian suicide drone targeted and destroyed a Russian military communications mast in Belgorod Oblast, Russia. This was from an Express UK news story.
Interesting. Now, that's interesting to know, and I wonder if we could go back and click on that video and it would work now. Nope. Still having some broadcast towers issues with that one. But that is cool to hear. I think we did cover that specific news bit earlier. It's just that the video didn't really load well enough for us to show it in its completion. But I do thank you for the support. And it is interesting here that that is confirmed that a suicide drone did hit that tower and knock the whole thing over. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from HerpDerpNV, who says, it's funny how accurately the laser pig loop describes how Russian equipment like the S-400 fails to live up to its advertisements, but their simps still try to cope.
And thank you so much for the support, and also thank you for letting me point out someone who is totally opposite of me, but I still respect a lot because they do their research. This guy is called Laserpig, if y'all haven't heard about him. He has 167,000 subscribers. Every single one of his thumbnails has a pig in it. And he covers some pretty interesting stuff. You can also see that the videos are really long. Some of them can get up to like 45 minutes long. But this guy does his research, and it is interesting enough to watch all the way through. Another cool thing about his channel is that he is actually kind of, I guess you could say, kind of debunked the James Burton thing. If you've ever watched Pentagon Wars, it was full of it. And then he went into a whole entire 28-minute long mini episode as to why. But a pretty good channel, and he does explain a lot of stuff like that. I don't see the specific video on here about the S-400, and maybe in these two right here. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And I do have to say, he does a pretty good job at making YouTube videos that are very informational on specific subjects like that. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from UberCon, who says, it looks like that was the commander or something, and the other guy was trying to run away without helping. Then it looked like the third guy shot the second guy.
I'm not sure about the third guy shooting the second guy. I did see the footage, and I'm not sure about that. He may have on accident, but I'm not entirely sure. But still, pretty interesting commentary, and that may have been the commander that was kind of wounded a little bit by the drone attack. And so thank you so much for the support, and thank you very much for weighing in with a little bit of commentary there of your own. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support. Also, I saw someone do it. We did cover this earlier. Someone said, every country has something like the Hitler Youth. It's called the Boy Scouts. And if you try and make a comparison in between the Boy Scouts, which teaches you how to tie a rope, versus the Hitler Youth, I don't know where you've been, but the Boy Scouts is pretty different. I've had a lot of friends who are in the Boy Scouts, and I never had them come back from a camping trip saying, America is #1, and everyone in the world is Untermenschen compared to us. I've never heard any of them say that. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Michael Cabrera, who says, Enforcer and Mike Tyson really left the building, ?
Is he asking for a Mike Tyson impersonation?
He's asking if Mike Tyson left the building.
Mike Tyson, if you're talking about the impersonation, he kind of did leave the building because I got a lot of flack for it. And while I'm into doing my own thing on this channel, and just doing whatever I want to do, sometimes you get so much flack for doing something, you're like, why do it? So largely, by and large, Mike Tyson has left. So a lot of people did find it funny, but at the same time, so many people complained that it just kind of got really difficult to do without feeling like it was just setting myself up to hear maybe 20 people complain nonstop in the live chat for the rest of the night about it. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question in a way, and thank you so much once again for the support. And if everyone wanted Mike Tyson to come back, it might happen. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Sick Lid, who says, thanks for exposing my secret plans, Enforcer. You must be working for the orcs, signed Zelensky and a mad face.
Working for the orcs?
I'm not sure what that was meant.
I don't know what that means, but I do thank you very much for the support and helping this channel keep on running, and unfortunately I can't comment on that because I don't know exactly what it was supposed to mean. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Crazy Kip Hunter, who does not leave a comment, but thank you very much for your support to the channel. And up next, we have a $5 donation from Zuan Wu, who says, hey, Enforcer, how are ya from Brisbane? It's my personal belief and hope that by the end of the war, if not already, Ukraine will be among the best militaries of the world. What are your thoughts?
Ukraine is doing incredibly good. That's one thing that cannot be argued about at all. It's an incredibly good top-rate military, especially compared to the Russians. However, due to their small budget, which will most likely resume after the war, because their incredibly small budget was already taking up nearly 5% of their GDP, there's just not a lot of room for them to develop their weapons systems, to make their entire military first-rate and incredibly modern. And on top of that, once this current war is over, there's probably not going to be a single enemy that Ukraine really has to square up against in the future to really need a burgeoning military for. Because if the Russians back out of Ukraine and they regain everything, like Crimea and the Donbass, and then they end up joining NATO, well, then they have the protection of the rest of NATO pretty much, and they could allow foreign militaries like the United States military to base within Ukraine, and that really removes the whole need for them to try and have a burgeoning, massive, first-rate, top-notch military. So while they're doing incredibly good now, I don't really think this is going to pave the way for Ukraine to be the best military in the world afterwards. Also, they don't have an incredibly large population to make it sizable enough that's a force to be reckoned with. And also, for them to be able to exert it around the world, they would have to do a whole bunch of other things, like building up a massive economy, an unbelievably massive economy compared to their population size. They would also have to have an impressive navy. They would have to have military bases overseas, and all that kind of stuff just unfortunately could not be feasibly done from a country like Ukraine in its position. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question. And while I think Ukraine does have a bright future ahead of it when it wins this war, I don't think it's going to be as bright as seeing them become the next major regional or world power. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support. And once again, take my input with a grain of salt because I could be wrong.
And real quick, just to let everybody know, we have about 14 super chats left until we get to our live chat questions. So up next, we have a $5 donation from Edgy Number 1, who says, base attacks were attackums. USA is not admitting they are playing mind games. Russia cannot admit attackums used. This admits weakness to the Russian citizens.
And can you reread that one real quick so that way you can make sure to understand it pretty well?
Yeah, they said base attacks were attackums. USA is not admitting they are playing mind games. Russia cannot admit attackums used, and this admits weakness to Russian citizens.
We did touch on that earlier, that exact kind of line of thinking, and I would have to agree with that, because that's kind of what I'm thinking in the back of my head, is that that's most likely what's happening, because we have historical instances of such things like that happening before, and even when we could have gone to war with the Soviet Union, the United States wouldn't. For example, in the Korean War, we knew that Soviet MiG fighter pilots were fighting the U.S. Air Force directly over MiG Alley, and we would do nothing about it because we knew that any kind of escalation, the U.S. government knew about it, the U.S. public didn't know about it. If we openly stated that, that means that we would have to go to war with the Soviet Union because they were directly attacking American fighter pilots in North Korea. And since the Soviet Union never officially declared that it was happening, the United States never had to officially come out and say that they were being attacked by them, and vice versa. And so that's kind of how the U.S. got away with going into World War III in the Korean War. And I think that's kind of what's happened in the flip in Ukraine now. The U.S. may have supplied Ukraine with ATACMS. They're using them, but we've never officially declared that, and so the Russians get away with pretending like the Ukrainians don't have ATACMS, although they probably know that they do. So with that, I hope that does answer the question in a way, and I entirely agree with you that that may be the missile that is being used. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question. Thank you so much once again for the support, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And moving on, we have a $5 donation from Sporks International, who says, I just want to say have a good day or night to everyone. Much love from Norway.
And thank you so much once again for the support. I'm going to get this right tonight. I got Sweden mixed up with Norway a couple of days ago, and Norway is Norway. Let's take a look at Oslo, and let's see what Oslo looks like. Also, I like the grid layout here. That's actually pretty nice. Anyways, let's check it out. Nice, pretty nice. Man, honestly, the Scandinavian countries all together are just incredibly nice. Unbelievably nice, as a matter of fact. Let's check out Mama Pizza. Alright, pretty cool picture. Pretty interesting pizzas and pastas. Neat. Wow, those pizzas are something. What is this? Is that like a ham?
I think so.
Man, those look pretty nice. I mean, the food there looks pretty good. But one thing I want to know is, what is Norwegian food like? Because, you know, everyone has a pizza shop. Everyone has Chinese food. And of course, in America, Mexican food is incredibly prevalent these days. But what is traditional Norwegian food like? I want to know. Does this serve Norwegian food? Maybe? Looks pretty nice. I can't say that. And I know that Oslo isn't representative of all of Norway, but, you know, you can get a pretty good feel for what a country is like by its major cities. That looks really nice. That looks like a fried moon pie with some ice cream on top of it. And let's see, let's check out some other places. Well, actually, we'll just cut it short right there, because we are a little crunch for time right now. But I do thank you so much once again for the support. And it is cool to hear that you are from Norway. Another Lee Spring Army member from Norway. And also, quick mention to the Oscarborg Fortress, which is incredibly cool if you ever look at the history of it. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much for enjoying this channel.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Rob ICX Man, who says, I fell asleep early. Research science and FDA can be difficult. Anyway, I missed a bit, so I was curious. Did you talk about the Wagner strike in Popasna and Putin's chef being either vaporized or missing?
I have not been able to cover Putin's chef being killed. I haven't actually heard about that until now, if true. And also, I didn't cover the strike in Popasna because, unfortunately, we didn't get any video evidence to back that up. And until then, we can never really talk about it specifically. But I do thank you very much for the support. I hope that does kind of answer the question. We're kind of having to declare ignorance on both of them because we didn't get any video or official evidence to speak on them. And also, did he say he was a research scientist with the FDA?
Research science in FDA. So yes, I believe so.
Hey, by the way, quick question, since you are in the FDA, could you make sure to finally approve haggis for import? Because that's been something that's kind of been cut off from Scotland, is that we don't allow haggis to be imported from Scotland into the U.S. because of certain, I guess you could say, requirements that it's not able to meet. Could we somehow bypass those and have it in here? Because I would actually like to try Scottish haggis for once. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment, and I hope you enjoyed the joke there a little bit. And so with that, we're on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Suze K. Sullivan, and we also have a $5 donation from J340. And thank you very much to both of you for your support. And J340 says that chain smoker is Mr. Bean. Think about it.
Mr. Bean. Don't copyright me, YouTube, please. Please don't. Mr. Bean. Apparently, Mr. Beast comes up before Mr. Bean. What kind of times do we live in? Mr. Bean. The G. Look, there's Mr. Bean, incredibly old. Is that his daughter? Oh, wait, no,
I don't think that's him.
No, those are two opposite people, but they look like, both of them look like Mr. Bean. And then we have the Menace. Very nice. Oh, man. Borat has gotten all kinds of people into bad situations. I mean, like, it's unbelievable how people can, like, fall for that. I don't know how. But I don't want to say that because probably someday I'll fall for it. But Mr. Bean is one hell of a character. And it may be Mr. Bean. I'm never ruling that out. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Laszlo Uriel, who says, great video of the soldier who lost a limb. We can make him better than he was before. Better, stronger, and faster.
Is that a $6 Million Man reference?
It could be. It could be.
Well, if it is, that's a pretty funny joke. And I thank you so much for the support. And I do have to say that that guy is certainly an inspiration to the whole entire country, that he is still willing to do his patriotic duty and defend Ukraine to the last. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from BL Parak, who says, due to all the weapons, training, and fighting experience, Ukrainian veterans may be highly sought after when the war is over. And what do you think?
I think that there will probably be a decent amount of mercenaries that come from Ukraine, but it's not always a major thing. Like, for example, in Vietnam, a lot of, well, not a lot, but some Vietnam veterans would go on to pretty much do mercenary work. A decent amount of them would end up in Rhodesia, which was happening about the same time. But it's not something that always happens. It's not really a big thing, but a lot of PMCs will be looking into the Ukrainian area and trying to see if maybe they can take some of these people who now certainly have in-depth experience of war and see if they would be willing to sign on to a high-paying contract and continue to do that kind of work for them. That may be possible, and that's never out of the equation. It's always kind of where mercenaries and PMCs kind of do their recruiting. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and thank you so much once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Junebug, who says, poke the like button. We also have a $2 donation from Ash Scott, who says, accidentally drop a cigarette on the like button. And we also have a $2 donation from Analyze R84, a $2 donation from Dupper Bob, as well as... that's actually it for the moment. So thank you very much to all of you for your support, very much. And yes, if you would all be so kind as to click that like button, hit the like button, or Stugna the like button. You can take your pick, but we'd appreciate it very much. And moving on to our next super chat, we have a $5 donation from Uber Khan, who says, look up PRSM, it could be that.
Look up PRSM. The Precision Strike Missile. It has a maximum firing range of 310 miles and can be launched from both the M270 and the HIMARS. It is with the selected weapon plan to achieve initial operational capacity in 2023. So unfortunately, it looks like it would be a little bit too early in time for this thing, but give it a year, and we might see these things. Also, another thing to note is that the United States is not always going to send its brand new, no one's going to send their brand new stuff to a foreign country. It never happens that way, and if they did, it's always usually dumbed down a lot, so that way a lot of their state secrets keep secret. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment, and thank you very much for the support, but that was a really good guess. That's a pretty good one, and it looks like it'll be replacing the ATACMS in the near future. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Suzanne B., who says, my mother is Slovak. I have been curious about Eastern European languages, so what language do they use that unifies their communication?
And can you reread that one real quick, actually?
Let's see. Suzanne said, I've been curious about Eastern European languages. What language do they use that unifies their communication?
English. I know that sounds really weird. In Ukraine, it's most likely Ukrainian that they probably encourage everyone to speak. But pretty much everyone around the world at this point speaks English as a second language. That's something that's taught a lot in Russian. And that's why you'll see the Russian people on TV. Иди нахуй, сука, блядь, где это блощет, красная блощет. And then they'll immediately cut into English just like this on TV. Because they all learn it as a second language. And so we look at Ukraine. How many people speak English in Ukraine? Of any kind, hopefully it'll give us the answer to that. Total English speakers in Ukraine, 18%. List of countries by English speaking. That's the English speaking people alone, and there's a lot of Ukrainians who probably speak English as a second language. So let's see. How many people? So between the ages of 20 and 35, which this is published in 2022, half of them can speak English. I'm guessing competently. So you can see that a decent majority of them speak English, but also we get into Ukraine demographics and look at the language breakdown. I'm sure that most of them just speak Ukrainian by and large. And so for their country alone, the pretty much national language will definitely be Ukrainian. But I want to make sure on that. Oh, well, look. Odd. Wait a minute, hang on. After World War II, their population peaked in 1993. That was their peak year. And their population, their national population, has dropped 12 million nearly from 1993 to now. Wow. That's crazy. Interesting. Anyways, moving on. We need to find the freaking languages. Oh man. Languages. It's got to be through here, right? Languages. Ukrainian, 67%. And Russian is around 30%. So it would be Ukrainian. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from David Moyers, who says, can you show the video of the Kherson pontoon bridge? I have only seen the pontoon ferry.
Unfortunately, we don't have a video, but we did have a picture on about a map around 2 weeks ago. But unfortunately, I couldn't really pull that up for you on the spot because that would take a little bit of searching and time to find. But I do thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And if you would like, you could go back to a video like 7 live streams back or around 12 back to one of the maps that was put up back then, and y'all should be able to find a picture of that pontoon bridge right around the Antonovsky Bridge. And so with that, we are on to the next question, and thank you so much for the support once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Nolan, who says, thanks for the updates, new sub, and looking forward to more updates. Regarding the robotic dogs, look up the Flipper Zero, which can trip a kill switch in them.
Flipper Zero. Portable multi-tool device for geeks. Let's take a look at this thing. Oh, it's got a dolphin on it. Is it like Flipper the dolphin?
That's pretty neat.
That's pretty cool.
What exactly is it, though?
Flipper Zero is tiny piece of hardware with curious personality of Cyber Dolphin. It can interact with digital systems in real life and grow while you use it. Explore any kind of access control system, RFID, radio protocol, and debug hardware using GPIO pin. The idea of Flipper Zero is to combine all the hardware tools you'll need for exploration and development on the go. Flipper was inspired by Puenegotchi project, but unlike other DIY boards, Flipper is designed with the convenience of everyday usage in mind. It has a robust case, handy buttons, and shape, and so there are no dirty PCBs or scratchy bins. Flipper turns your projects into a game, reminding you that development should always be fun. So pretty much, it's like it's just some kind of random board, I guess.
And Enforcer, it looks like the dolphin. Go back up a little bit to that first picture. The dolphin might be Australian. It says, "Hey mate, let's play."
Oi mate, let's play.
Yes, that's the right accent for it too.
And everyone's like digging the accent. Wait a minute, y'all think that's good? And I don't run a poll, Matthew. Let's see the poll answer if that's good or not. Because I can't believe people find that to be a good one. I thought it was cheese, but we'll see. But still, it is really interesting. I do thank you for letting us know about that. And thank you so much once again for the support. Because this is a really cool little gadget here. I think I might have to get one of these for myself sometime. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support. And also, can we get that poll up real quick, man? There we go. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Kevin Scott 76, who says, continuing my grandpa's World War II story, Bronze Star liberating the concentration camp at Nordhausen, Germany, and captured 6 Germans there. Captain Lay.
Nordhausen, Germany. Let's have a look. Nordhausen. Where's the... Yes, this would be the camp. Yeah, there's the foundations. Nothing really exists of the camps anymore. They usually ripped them down to the ground. But yes, this would be where the camp was. And it looks to have been a smaller one, actually. But then again, a lot of it could just, since it was torn down, just cease to exist. I'm trying to look around here and get a good idea of what this would have looked like. But let's just click on the little museum, I suppose, and that'll give us a pretty good idea. What? There's caves? Wait a minute. Is this that specific concentration camp where von Braun had the rocket motors being made? Because there's one on display right here. It's a very interesting piece of history if it was. But you see the remnants of a small shunting engine here. And, of course, the furnaces which they would use to incinerate the dead. But very interesting. I didn't actually know about this specific camp, but it looks like it may have been the one that was used to produce the rocket motors for the V2. I'm sorry, I think I said V1, but it was V2 actually. And I'm not particularly sure, but I will look into that. And I thank you very much once again, Kevin Scott, for sharing your story of what your grandfather did in the war, because that is something. And everyone has stories like that, but it's always cool to hear the specific stories and the specific journey of an individual person in such a massive war like World War II. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have 2 final super chats. We have a $2 donation from Texas Style, who says LSA Texas Style. And we also have a $2 donation from Kieran Whitfield, who says, I love watching these streams.
And I thank both of y'all for the support. And also, thank you so much for enjoying watching the streams. And thank you so much for supporting them, because it does help us to keep these things running, so that way you can keep enjoying them. So, thank you to both of y'all once again for y'all support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And moving on to our live chat questions, we are now officially done with our super chat questions. So that calls for... Yeehaw! And now moving on to our live chats. Up first, we have a question from Kim Henning, who says, with continued shipments of advanced weapons to Ukraine, will it be possible to push Russians out of Kherson and across the river before winter?
Yes, it is entirely possible. I believe it may even be possible now, honestly. I think they have all the equipment they can get. Because while they can get masses of equipment, they may not have enough infantry to use them, and that's always a consideration. So right now, I think they may be about as ready to go as ever. Once again, I'm not exactly sure, but that's what I'm thinking right now. And so with that, I think that we would most likely see one for sure before the end of fall. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we are on to the next one. And also, I can see that the poll has brought back some really interesting results for me. Three quarters of y'all liked the accent, which was really interesting. And so with that, we're now on to the next question.
All right, and moving on to the next one, we have a question from Sir Gods, who says, should Putin ban people leaving Crimea like Leningrad and Stalingrad?
No, I don't really think he should. Because if he did something like that, it would really stop the spread of information in Russia. It would be to his advantage to do something like that. But it wouldn't be to our advantage for him to do something like that. So I say, let him flow. And so with that, I hope that answers the question, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Nick Blaine, who says, would you rather fight an army of Russian-sized chickens or an army of chicken-sized Russians?
I would rather fight an army of chicken-sized Russians, because Russians are already pretty bad at what they do. And so if they're chicken-sized, you could really just punt them around a lot, and that would fix a lot of the problems. And so with that, I hope that answers the question, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from Red Star 1, who says, if for any reason the U.S. was pulled into the fight, how long do you believe the Russians would last if they did not use nuclear weapons?
I believe they would probably last at the longest 6 months. They would most likely get overrun pretty quickly. And so I hope that answers the question, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Cromwell, who says, do you think the Crimea main bridge to Russia can be destroyed?
I think it could be, considering that the Ukrainians are starting to reach further and further into Crimea. It may be possible to hit the Kerch Bridge now, although we're not exactly sure. So with that, I hope that kind of answers the question in a way, and we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Brooks Taylor, who says, can you discuss the Russian troops in Moldova and the lack of news regarding those troops?
Yes, due to a little bit of a political skirmish that happened in Moldova in the late 90s, there is an unofficial country there called Transnistria. There are several thousand Russian troops stationed there, along with the Transnistrian troops, since the late 90s, but by and large, there's really no way to supply them effectively to keep them going if they were to try and push into Crimea from Transnistria, and also that would lead to the Ukrainians probably snuffing out Transnistria, along with the support from the Moldovans, which would get rid of Russia's little enclave, pretty much, that exists in there. And so I hope that kind of addresses them a little bit, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Paulie, who says, did you see the story about the Wagner Group taking a photo with the headquarters address in the background? Building destroyed, potentially 100 plus mercenaries napping.
I did not, actually. I wouldn't doubt it, though, because it seems like that would be something the Wagner Group would do. So sadly, I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that specific bit, because I haven't heard about it specifically, but I would not doubt it one bit. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Pakatang, who says, Enforcer, how would the Russians respond to ultimatum, leave all of Ukraine, return all prisoners by December 1st, or Ukraine joins NATO and full NATO engagement in the war?
I'm not exactly sure, because there's a lot of variables to be considered in that, like people's personalities, how they would react to that kind of thing, and that all that kind of stuff is too much of a variable to really consider, and it could change from day to day. So unfortunately, I couldn't exactly tell you how the Russians would react to that kind of thing, but I do believe, honestly, that if we were to give an ultimatum like that, where we said it's either this or it's all-out war, I think the Russians would back down, because they already know that they're on the losing end of the war if it was to happen, and then a nuclear onslaught doesn't really give anyone an advantage. The Russians would still end up being destroyed at the end of it. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're going to answer 3 more questions from the live chat, and then we're going to round out tonight's stream.
And next up, we have a question from Pakatang once more, who says, Enforcer, does the banning rather than censoring of Ukrainian war footage decrease the engagement and support of the Western citizens? Will Western countries eventually regret banning those videos?
And which videos are those?
The Ukrainian ones.
I haven't heard of any Western countries banning Ukrainian videos. We have access to pretty much every video that's ever come out, as far as I know. But if you know something that we don't, please let me know, because I haven't heard of them being banned at the moment. And I don't think there is a ban like that, because the internet in the West is largely free, and you could find this stuff really anywhere. But with that, I hope that answers the question, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Jungle Jim AB9AB, who says, is it possible that the Ukrainians have developed a domestic ATACMS munitions for use in the USA-donated HIMARS? That would explain the extended range.
Can you reread that one real quick?
Yes, Jungle Jim said, is it possible that the Ukrainians have developed a domestic ATACMS munition for use in the USA-donated HIMARS? Would that explain the extended range?
I don't think that would be possible. Usually it takes a decent while to develop missiles, and considering that they would have had to have developed this missile within the past few months, since they only have had the HIMARS for a few months at this point, and then also produce them, that turnaround time seems a little too quick. So I think it would either have to just be a plain out ATACMS, or they're using Krems with a different kind of launcher. But then again, that's just my opinion, and it could be possible that the Ukrainians have done something like that. And so with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that lucky last viewer is Kellen Hansen, who says, Enforcer, after destroying all these bridges, how will Ukraine cross them when it comes to chasing the orcs back into Russia?
Their goal may not be to cross them. They may be trying to just push them to the other side and then close off that area altogether. That would be a smart move for them, considering that they kind of have to pick and choose where they engage the Russians, and they can't really allow the entire front line to be pushed across, because if they're able to push across, the Russians are also able to do the same, and it gives the Russians far more options if, say, those bridges were left intact, and the Russians could just try and push back over and then push the Ukrainians out. So in my opinion, I think the Ukrainians are going to be pushing the Russians across the Dnieper River and then destroy all the bridge crossings there, so that way the Russians would never be able to cross into the western area of the country again, and then they would most likely focus their offensives and counterattacks into areas on open ground like the Zaporizhia front or the Kharkiv or Severodonetsk area, in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. It has been an absolute pleasure to cover all of this news for y'all, and I hope y'all found it interesting as well. Once again, we run these streams every single day of the week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, except for Mondays. And so if you enjoyed tonight's stream and you were here for the first time, then you are a trooper, and I highly suggest you subscribe, because we will be doing the exact same thing at 10 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day, the next day, and the next day until Monday again. And so with that, thank you all so much once again, and I hope y'all all have a great night, and I'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for day 175 of the news, which will put us just 25 days away from day 200. Thank you all once again, and I'll see you then. Good night, and take care.